Hi, it's Brandon from Crane Appliance. Since 1983, our goal as a family-owned company has been simple: to give our neighbors on the Cape and Islands a great shopping experience. Rest easy knowing our professional team will listen to your needs and help you pick the perfect appliances for your home. At Crane Appliance, we know how difficult appliance shopping can be. Our team is here for you. Crane Appliance, we call the Cape and Islands home.
Carlson Printing, 508-548-7303. Our email address is carlsonprinting@gmail.com. Carlson Printing, for all your printing needs.
Good evening. I'm going to call to order the Town of Falmouth Select Board regular meeting. It is 6:02, and the board is going to adjourn to go into executive session. Do I have a motion?
Motion. Second.
Second by roll call. All in favor? Miscali, aye.
Brown, aye.
Reed, aye.
Richardson, aye.
Goldstone, aye.
Okay, we will return by 6:30. Thank you. Okay, good evening. I'm going to call to order the Town of Falmouth Select Board regular meeting. It is 6:30. The board has just returned from executive session where we agreed to a contract with the New England Police Benevolent Association, Local 61 police sergeants. So if you will please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, our first order of business is a proclamation, and I'm going to read this proclamation. Whereas the Falmouth Fund was established in 2009 as a grassroots effort by several longtime residents of Falmouth, and whereas the Falmouth Fund was established as a permanent endowment fund under the umbrella of the Cape Cod Foundation, whereas a permanent endowment enables the Falmouth Fund to respond to the changing needs of the Falmouth community, both today and in future years. And whereas the Falmouth Fund awards grants to nonprofit organizations doing important work in all respects of the Falmouth community: health and human services, education, youth and recreation, arts and culture, and the environment. Whereas members of the Falmouth Fund advisory and grant committees are active volunteers in the Falmouth community and have a background in one or more areas in which we focus our grant awards. And whereas the Falmouth Fund supports nonprofit organizations that are responding to community needs, as well as those that innovate and collaborate to enhance the quality of life in Falmouth. And whereas the Falmouth Fund concludes our 2026 grant cycle in January, we will have invested over $1.5 million to over 100 nonprofit organizations since our first awards in 2010. Now, therefore, we, Robert P. Miscali, Heather M.H. Goldstone, Douglas C. Brown, Colin W. Reed, and Jack P. Richardson, as members of the Select Board of the Town of Falmouth, by the authority vested in us, do hereby proclaim and acknowledge the 15th anniversary of the Falmouth Fund. In witness whereof, we have hereunto set our hand and caused the great seal of the Town of Falmouth to be affixed on this 15th day of February, 15th day of December, getting ahead of myself, 2025. Thank you very much. Someone who would like to speak, so please approach the podium.
Thank you very much. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Sharon Nunes, and I am chair of the Falmouth Fund since 2018. I want to thank everyone, the Select Board especially, for this recognition for the Falmouth Fund. And I'd be remiss if I also didn't recognize the founders of the Falmouth Fund who started this in 2009. There were several longtime residents of Falmouth who recognized the need for a fund that would support all of the areas that were mentioned in the proclamation, to support the nonprofits in Falmouth. But in addition to that group of folks who were led by Eileen Miskell, which I'm sure most people in this room know, I also need to thank a few other folks. Some members of my advisory committee are here and grant committee, and they do the yeoman's work for what we do under the umbrella of the Falmouth Fund. They put many hours of work in. We're all volunteers, including myself. We are all volunteers, and we put a lot of hours in really identifying the needs across town, meeting with many leaders across town to identify the needs in Falmouth, so that when our grant competition is underway, we have input and insight as to where we think we can have the most impact from the nonprofits. And we're proud to say that we have supported over 100 nonprofits in our 15 years. Our donors have been incredibly supportive since the beginning, longtime donors, recent donors, and without their funding, we wouldn't be able to do any of this. But lastly, I just really want to recognize the hundreds of nonprofits that support this community and how proud I am to know them, because they actually do a lot of work that is many times visible for the large nonprofits and sometimes not very visible for the smaller and younger nonprofits. We support nonprofits that are well-established in town, that have been here for decades, and we also support some emerging nonprofits and sometimes take a chance on, whether they will survive and continue to be able to contribute what they do. I've been incredibly impressed with the leadership and the volunteers from these organizations. And so on behalf of especially the nonprofits, but also my committee members and the donors and the town leaders, thank you for this proclamation and accept it on their behalf.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We're going to process this and get the original to the fund. Thank you very much, Ms. Nunes. Okay, we will move on to recognition. Mr. Reed.
Saw a nice thing online today that Chief Laurie was honored with the Hector Pelletier Award for work supporting the Jimmy Fund. This is something that has affected him personally in his life with a young family member, and he's continued to be the co-captain of the association's Jimmy Fund Walk and many other fundraisers. So just a big accolade out to Chief Laurie for what he's done with the Jimmy Fund.
Okay, anyone else? Chair Goldstone, Vice Chair.
I'd like to start on a happy note and say Happy Hanukkah to those celebrating, but cannot say that without also recognizing the lives lost and lives tragically changed at a Hanukkah celebration in Bondi Beach, Australia, over the weekend. Unfortunately, it was a really tough weekend because I would also like to recognize the tragic shooting at Brown University over the weekend. There are multiple residents of Falmouth who are currently students at Brown and members of the Brown University community who are grappling with this right now, and our thoughts are with all of them.
Thank you. I certainly would like to recognize the Falmouth Chamber of Commerce and all the great work they did with respect to the Christmas parade, and many of the nonprofits that participated and other organizations in town that participated. It was a wonderful event. I think we may even have a winner here. Mr. Reed, do you want to talk to that a little bit?
Huey's second consecutive.
But who's counting?
But who's counting? We won the first prize for the adult level of parade float. So it's pretty fun.
Very good.
Again, I'll second the Chamber's events. They're fantastic. From night one to the end, it's been great.
A little adult entertainment float, was it?
It was an interesting name of a float prize.
Okay.
I will also recognize that this past Saturday at 4 o'clock in the afternoon at the Village Green, I joined a number of residents, some of whom I see here this evening, in the dedication of the plaque at the entrance of the Village Green, actually, in a really nice place, in honor of Harry Hill, longtime worker here in Falmouth, and it was really a pleasure to meet the family and meet some of the people who were involved in the movement to get that plaque dedicated to Mr. Hill.
Yeah, very nice. Sorry to have missed that. Some reason
Okay.
forgot to set a reminder about it.
Announcements, anyone? Anything coming up?
I think we'll get some details later, but want to make sure while we've got folks watching at the beginning that they can come back for all the details later this evening. But we will be having a community conversation event on January 22nd.
Correct.
Is that correct? To discuss ICE and immigration issues here in Falmouth. And it's the night before that, January 21st, we will also have a public meeting. That one will be on the beach management plan, I believe. Is that the correct date still? Okay. So a couple of, mark your calendars for into January.
A lot going on. So we're going to now turn to any other announcements? No? We'll turn to public comment, but before I do, I just want to remind everyone to silence your cell phones. Notify the chair if you are making a video or audio recording of this open session meeting. Placement and operation of the recording equipment should not interfere with the conduct of the meeting. So public comment may be made on routine matters not on the agenda this evening. Comments are limited to 2 minutes. Please introduce yourself. Since the matter has not been included on the agenda, the Select Board may not participate in discussion of the topic. Okay, we will open for a public comment. Sir?
Thank you for this opportunity. My name is John Honey. I'm a resident of Seascape, which is a group of about 100 homes between Fiddler's Cove and Magansett Outer Harbor. I want to just make some comments about the oyster farms that are proposed for Magansett Harbor. First of all, we're very much in favor of oyster farms as they scavenge nitrogen from the water. Our concern is with the particular ones that are going in there is that they're on the surface and not submerged. And we have several concerns about the fact they're on the surface. One is they'll attract seabirds, which are cormorants and seagulls. And if you've ever been to the Weepecket Islands, you can appreciate the smell that they produce. And we just are concerned that that smell will now be in Magansett Harbor as well. There's a lot of sailing activities that go on in Magansett Harbor with the Magansett Yacht Club, and they have weekend races, and they also have other races with other groups from around the area. And I'm afraid that these floating oyster farms will interfere with the route or the freedom that they have in sailing around Magansett Harbor. Also, we're concerned about navigation and the threats to navigation that these propose. Obviously, if it's a nice sunny day, you can see the floating containers and avoid them. But our concern is with foggy days or rainy days, and it may be difficult to see them, and boats entering Fiddler's Cove or Rance Canal or the Inner Harbor may collide with some of these things. What we're really like to do is to set up a meeting with you folks where we could discuss our concerns and possibly include other people from the area that also have concerns. And that's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I'm Kathy Valeriani, Precinct 8. Just before I start my comment, just for recognition, a beloved teacher in this town passed this week, Mary Lawton. My daughter had her in school, was still one of her favorite teachers, just a lovely person. I didn't want to let it go that I was hoping somebody would mention. Okay, anyway, hi. I'm here with tidings of joy and gratitude, representing Ed Valeriani, Brian Dale, and Ernie Holcomb, who were the organizers for the Harry Hill project that Mr. M.G.L mentioned. Had a great success. More than 36 people attended in the cold on a weekend where everybody was busy doing family things, Christmas things. It was a wonderful turnout. This is just on paper, but just for the home audience, his stone is down there right at the end of the triangle at the Village Green. Troy Clarkson's going to be doing an article in the Enterprise, so watch for it. It'll have many stories, history about how special Harry was. Just an employee of the town, but over and above for everything he did because he loved his community and people from young to seasoned. And then just a picture of the family, the extended family that came. You all have a digital copy, which is much better, that I wanted you to see. And I didn't post anything yet because I wanted the family and you people to see it at first. I also want to thank the DPW Parks Department, went over and above to help us with this. They made sure everything was set. They helped set the stone into place. Ed Valeriani and Brian Dale took 2 days to hone out the inset, the stone, to get the inset to go in. Later, they put the inset in, so they didn't farm it out. This was a labor of love. The family is so touched and so honored that he's honored this way, and has brought so much joy to the families of this town from this high to this high. And it's going to be there for hundreds of years to come. So thank you, and Mr. M.G.L, thank you for taking on as the liaison of our group.
My pleasure.
And I'm just looking to see if I forgot anybody or anything, but just such an honor, and watch for the article in the Enterprise. Thank you all for helping us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We will now move to the consent.
One more.
Oh, one more? I'm sorry. How could I miss you? How could I miss you, Mr. Haggerty?
Hi, everyone. My name is Dave Moriarty, Falmouth, and I just want to acknowledge all of the terrific citizens of Falmouth who came out to the last planning board for the solar array out in Hatchville, proposed for on top of our soul aquifer. That's the only way that we can get clean water here on Cape Cod. And should anything happen, perhaps a fire, these lithium batteries explode all the time all over the country. Should that ever happen, it will be a total disaster. The people came out in droves. They were so articulate. You know, they brought up a sound study. There's no sound study. There's no wildlife corridor. There's no containment for the polluted, toxic water waste. Should there ever be a fire? There are so many things left out. Property values. It was very impressive. And I just want to remind everyone about the third planning board meeting coming up, December 13th at 6:30 in this room. And I look forward to seeing all of the Falmouth residents here and voicing their opinion on this, tragic. I don't understand how this project got so far in the first place. And it goes against federal regulations. You cannot jeopardize a community's sole source water supply. It's a federal law. So I just hope this doesn't turn into 10 years of litigation like the turbines turned into, especially when the town and the officials had the information from the manufacturers and refused to share it at their public meetings, which is a total sin. And we don't want anything like this to ever happen again in Falmouth. So these people are not going to sleep on their rights. There'll be no doctrinal latches. So I just wanted to make that perfectly clear to everyone. Happy holidays. And it was nice seeing everyone.
Thank you. Okay. Now we'll move to the consent agenda. Licenses. Consider approval of annual license renewals for 2026. They are all listed in the packet. Consider approval of an application by Woods Hole Golf Club at 130 Quistit Avenue for a change of officers for its all-alcoholic beverage club license. Administrative orders. Consider the approval of the North Falmouth Woods Phase 2 conservation restriction. Number 2, consider a vote to approve the request for a variance to Sign Code Section 184-25, freestanding signs from J&J Sign Company on behalf of the First Congregational Church of Falmouth at 68 Main Street to replace the existing sign at the rear of the property on Katharine Lee Bates Road. Okay, I think that's it.
I move approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. We will now move to a public hearing, and I will ask Vice Chair Goldstone to read the public hearing notice.
The Falmouth Select Board will hold a public hearing on Monday, December 15th, 2025 at 6:45 p.m. in the Select Board Meeting Room, Town Hall, 59 Town Hall Square, Falmouth, Massachusetts, under Chapter 40, Section 56, as amended by Chapter 369 of the Acts of 1982 and Chapter 79 of the Acts of 1983. The Falmouth Select Board will conduct a public hearing on whether the Town of Falmouth should implement the Classification Act. At said hearing, the Select Board will hear a presentation regarding the allocation of the fiscal 2026 tax levy, which will determine the share of taxes which each property classification shall pay. The Board of Assessors shall provide all information and data relevant to making a decision of allocating the tax burden, including the fiscal effects of the available options, per order of the Select Board.
Okay, Mr. Rencho, would you give us an introduction?
Yes,
please?
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Select Board, good evening. Unfortunately, our new Chief Assessor is out ill today, so our thoughts are with her. Hopefully she recovers quickly. As you all know, each year the Board of Assessors submits recommendations and explanations to the Select Board for the annual classification hearing. The Finance Director, Laura Citron, is here on behalf or in support of our assessor and is going to go through the presentation, and hopefully between her and Peter and I, we can answer any questions you might have. Laura?
Good evening. I'm Laura Citron, Director of Finance. Okay, so this has to be done each year, and we're usually very late in the year to get this done for a number of reasons, not the least of which is we have to wait until after town meeting and all of that is sorted because the appropriations are needed and also to set the tax rate and to deal with some of the other information as well. So we come to you in December and ask that this get adopted in time to mail the December 31st tax bills. So we're kind of at the last possible meeting here. But what I will go through is, so you've been given a handout, and it provides information that talks about the different things that you need to vote tonight, hopefully. One is what they call the residential factor. And what that does is determine how the tax rate is going to be allocated across classes. The second thing that you're going to be asked to vote on is whether or not to allow a residential exemption for open space. The third thing is whether or not you will do a residential exemption for a small commercial business, which means less than 10 people, and a total property value of under $1 million. And the fourth thing is whether or not to do a residential tax exemption. And that's been before you, before this board for the last, well, at least 3 years, anyway, that I know of. Okay, so the Board of Assessors did make recommendations on all of these. They recommend that you stick with a single tax rate across all classes of property, which would mean that you vote a residential factor of 1. In this case, if you vote the residential factor of 1, the tax rate will be $5.73 per $1,000 of value. The second thing that they recommend is that you vote to reject the residential, commercial, and open space exemption options in fiscal year '26, which is what we're dealing with. I know we're also looking at the fiscal year '27 budget, but this is for fiscal year '26. We're setting the rate for '26. I will take any questions that you might have.
I know Mr. Brown.
Hope I can answer them.
No, I had my question is sufficiently answered, and also it's part of the explanation in the packet that I had missed earlier, but I just read it.
No, I had sent a few questions, mostly clarifying questions earlier today, which were all answered, I think, quite satisfactorily. I do just want to make clear, especially given that there was at least one letter to the editor in the Enterprise last week about this board considering a residential tax exemption, that is something that this board has talked about, that staffing and software for the implementation of a residential tax exemption in FY28 is currently in our FY27 budget. What we're talking about tonight is FY26 and the feasibility of implementing a residential tax exemption by this date. So I think just wanted to make that clear, that is something that this board has very much been considering and is working toward.
Yeah, I haven't shut up about it.
I was a little surprised to see letters in the Enterprise saying that we should talk more about a residential tax exemption.
Happy to. Thank you, Mr. Clark. Yeah, so on that, I know we've talked about FY28 for a residential exemption. How impossible or how much harder would it be to have that for FY27? So I'm not going to push you for FY26. That would be insane. I understand. I know there's a lot, and I can already see your reaction, but how much heavy lifting would that be to have that online a year sooner?
I would say that you need a good 8 months of preparation and formulating a plan and putting everything together to get to that point. And I don't think we're in position to do that for fiscal year '27. We have a brand new assessor who kind of came in right at the worst time in terms of having to present all of this information and get all this put together so that we can get the tax rate for '26 set. I think it's pushing it. I mean, I do. I'm sorry.
No, I understand. For me, it's an important tax relief in a time where we're going to look later, our revenues need to increase, and I would not want to increase taxes on year-round residents without first reducing their taxes overall. So if there's any way we can work on that at all, I'm happy, to discuss it another time, but I understand how heavy a lift is. I understand this has also been a conversation for 3 years, boards before I was on. For me, I just want to see action on a policy that's broadly popular widely around Cape, but I understand that there's a huge administrative burden with it, so I empathize with that. But if there's any way we all can work towards that, whatever. If I need a volunteer, I'm happy to volunteer.
I think there's been a lot of talk about it over the years. I think it's fairly well known in the community that this board is supportive of actually making it happen, but I do believe our town manager would like to say something.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just a quick comment, and I appreciate Select Board Member Richardson's comments and ask to expedite. Beyond the lift, the staff lift, we do have that part-time, three-quarter time staffing position built into the recommended FY27 budget. So we're doing more than talking about it like we've done the past few years. We're actually taking steps. In addition to the lift, the staff lift, it's also a software. A year and a half ago, feels like 2 years, a year and a half ago, we procured the Munis Enterprise Financial Management System. That implementation has been a challenge, quite honestly. It always is. Every place I've been where it's brought in, it's a huge system. So we're still working through those challenges as well. So not only the staffing end of it, but also the technology end, we would not have in place realistically for FY27.
I appreciate it. You guys know me.
We're making progress.
No, and I understand that, and I appreciate that. And I mentioned when you overviewed the budget that I really appreciated that was in there. So, and thank you for dealing with me.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Reed?
I appreciate the the deadline here. When I read the last statement of that this will cause, any delay in this vote will cause potential cash flow issues for the town. I appreciate how long you had to wait for November town meeting. We've had a month. I would appreciate getting this information a little bit earlier, but also just, again, broken record here, we're talking about all of these things in pieces, and we're voting on things in pieces, and we're considering things in pieces. Just in this agenda alone, in 10 topics, we're going to be talking about a different tax-related thing. So with the town manager's assessment of the operating budget and the deficits that are forecasted in the out years, I think it would behoove us to really think about a larger discussion and a timely discussion of expenses, revenues, and taxes in a big picture format, so that we are not just looking at these at one-offs because we have an impending deadline. I'd rather us work from a deadline backwards and talk about these holistically and comprehensively.
Well, thank you, Mr. Reed. We certainly appreciate your thoughts and needs for further discussion. I think one of the things the board will be considering next year is actually looking at increasing the number of select board meetings we may have in a month, so that we can deal with these issues possibly in a more efficient and effective way. So that's something we'll be dealing with in the new year. So, okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
If I might, just one brief response on, clearly the town manager and I have heard, and we've been talking with the chair about how to bring related issues together on a, more frequent and try to look at things as comprehensively as we can. Just one detail point on that with specific to this hearing, it's revenue neutral. No matter what we do at this hearing, there's no additional revenue gained or revenue lost. Which isn't to say it's an isolated issue. It connects with, economic affordability issues, but it does not connect with revenues and expenditures and what the budget can support or not support.
Okay, thank you. Is anyone prepared to make a motion?
Do we need to take public comment?
Oh, I'm sorry. Public comment with respect to this? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Kathy Valeriani again, Precinct 8. My comments are not to your vote tonight at hand, but are related because, as we don't have to tell anybody here about the affordability on the Cape, our young kids that have to leave, that can't stay here, how many workers have to live off the bridge and come back. So between the real estate market and the property tax, my concern is that right now we have a teacher that has taught for over 40 years in this town who has to leave her home of 33 years because her landlord keeps putting the rent up so high, she can't afford it anymore. Another beloved teacher who affected thousands and thousands of kids in this community, and now she's 78 and has to sell half her belongings to get into the senior housing in a little studio apartment. People that work for the town, that stay, are dedicated people. They do that job because they love it. They could have made way more in the public sector, but we didn't. We chose this. My concern is the same as what she's experiencing. My husband and I are both 30-year employees of the town, loved our jobs. I'm concerned, I'm grateful that we have the benefits in town we do. I'm grateful for the care that you give to this town and fill the needs that we have. I'm just concerned watching my taxes go up and our pensions not going up very much at all, that I'm afraid we've been in our home 46 years. I fought for 40 years for the Hatchville Fire Department to get that to come to be. I knew my taxes would go up, but we needed it. I'm just concerned that I don't want to, and other town employees. I know you can't, state laws say you can't give certain people certain rates because of laws, but I just hope there's something that if there's some kind of discount, some kind of break in the future where your former town employees are going to be in trouble. And we're already here because this teacher's just one example. So thank you for listening, and thank you for letting me get a little off the topic. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment? Entertain a motion to close public hearing?
One more comment off of that. I know the previous board also considered a senior exemption. I think that's something we should talk about as well at some point in the future.
I think we have that.
We have
Well,
yeah,
1,500?
I don't remember the specifics, but
$1,000
I believe we've gone to the maximum
Yeah,
that the
I
local,
think
that
we've done
the
that.
law.
Oh, that's right. They changed it to be 500 more. That's right. Okay. I thought we did that right there.
Motion to close?
Move that we close the public hearing.
Have a motion?
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any further discussion with respect to the motion? Okay, is anyone prepared to make the motion?
I would move a motion to tax all classes of property at the same rate by adopting factor of 1 and to reject the residential, commercial, and open space exemption options.
Okay, we have a motion?
Seconded with the clarification that this is for FY26.
Correct.
Okay, we have a motion and a second as clarified. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you. We'll now move to an update on implementation of our plastic reduction regulations. We have Mr. Scott McGann, our health agent.
Good evening.
You're slotted for 10 minutes. Mr. McGann.
Good evening. Scott McGann, Health Division. I apologize. I got a little bit of a cough that started this afternoon, so if I get a little off, bear with me. Just in case you didn't know, 2023, there was a petition in this article to ban all single-use plastics. It ended up to a Plastic Reduction Advisory Committee, which developed a regulation. The Board of Health voted that regulation in April, this past April, and it went in place in September 1st. It took about a year or so for the committee to create a regulation, primarily because of the lack of alternatives. A Falmouth-specific regulation is difficult when most people are buying from U.S. Food Service or Cisco and some of these national chains. And the green or eco-friendly line is actually plant-based plastics and don't recycle. You can't recycle them, and they would have to go in the trash. They were industrial compostable, and we don't have an industrial compostable facility. So the regulation ended up is some suitable alternatives, such as household compostable, wood, paper, glass, etc. A waiver process done by staff at the Health Division. And the criteria for that was pretty loose. Financial considerations, or there's no alternative. I think to speak for the PRAC, Plastic Reduction Advisory Committee, they weren't looking to change how people would do things. They just wanted them to use a better tool for it or a better material. And so we are receiving waivers when there is no suitable replacement. There's also a Board of Health variance for things that are that they felt that needed to go to the board for a decision. So that's a little bit of a background. This regulation is nothing like any Board of Health regulation that we typically do. Septic tanks have to be 10 feet from a property line. You have to cook your chicken to 165. This regulation is a little bit more like driving over time to better alternatives. And so through the waiver process, and this year we've had plenty of waivers. Today is the deadline. Any restaurant owners who have not applied for a food permit today, here's your notice that today was the deadline to apply for a food permit. Waivers are coming in with those food permit applications. Some have no waivers listed. Some have 1, 2. Some have 2 pages. Usually your markets are going to be larger. Restaurants that just use takeout containers are simple. A grocery store is going to be more difficult because they use lots of different containers, lots of lids, lots of things of that nature. So that process is occurring. All this permit renewals usually start the 1st of October, so October, November into December. We have been going through the waiver requests, and by and large, granting most of the waivers because it's a learning curve for us as well. Over time, as we learn about suitable alternatives, we can transfer that over to some other places that may not have found a suitable transfer. So this is sort of, to use a corporate word, like a soft opening on a regulation. It's not typical how we would do this. If a regulation says you need a denitrification system starting X date, trust me, if anybody submitted building permits, I'm making them put the denitrification. This is more a learning curve for the restaurants. We did have 2 informational sessions and multiple emails, but I do have a handful of restaurants who have never heard of it until the day they applied for their food permit. So we have a lot of learning, a lot of education on this end. And also our staff have to be educated. If I see a straw somewhere, I happen to have gone to a local place and saw an agave straw. I thought it was a cool thing. And so now it's like sending an email out to all the restaurants and let them know, hey, there's a new straw in town. So that's kind of where we're doing with this. There will be, the Board of Health doesn't know this yet, but there's some restaurants who need variances. In the next meeting or 2, there'll be a few food establishments that'll need it. Especially larger ones like Stop and Shop and Shaw's, they have quite a bit of plastic. So also what we're doing is during the inspections, starting, we have a new food inspector who started this summer, has been going through and walking the establishments as she does an inspection through what the regulation is and what the process is. Compliance starts during the inspection process. So that's where the rubber meets the road. As we start to do inspections, you filled out a waiver for this. You didn't fill a waiver out for that. We'll be doing compliance over the next year to get everybody's paperwork and what we expect over the 2026. So it has probably doubled to tripled the time out to review a food permit application, which we expected the first year. Probably the second year will be better. Maybe tweak the form a little bit. You learn as you go. And also during the food inspections, it has been a considerably increase in time, at least for the restaurants that we've, that have wanted to take the time and learn. So we are working our way through it. We have lots of waivers. Like I said, we've granted most of the waivers just until we know better to do it. So that's it.
In light of all the waivers, Mr. McGann, is there any discussion about modifying the regulations to somehow avoid what is resulting in all of these waivers?
Well, the bigger question is, it's a good question. The question is, I guess, is there a suitable replacement, right? So lids are a great example. It's very hard to replace a lid. It has to be a thin enough plastic and still be able to grab the edge. There's low-hanging fruit that'll be easy, but I think there's always going to be some. Now, if you don't want to grant waivers, now you're kind of defaulting back to the original petitioner's article. When you start really digging into it, most of the replacements, the green lines and what I call the eco lines, whatever the vendor wants to call them, are all plant-based plastics, which need to be industrial compostable. So it's going to be difficult for some of these things to be replaced. And the Plastic Reduction Advisory Committee, I think since the Board of Health made the regulation, Board of Health may ask or request of the Select Board to reinstate, if that's a proper word, if they want to go back to look at, or the board could do it themselves, because it is a Board of Health regulation. I guess we could leave the Plastic Advisory Committee out. One of our board members is on there, so the board could modify it as they see fit. So I think the best thing to do is let the dust settle, come back to the board, tell them where we're seeing most of the issues, and go from there.
I mean, that was why I asked the town manager to put you on the agenda and give us an update so we can at least start thinking about these things in Board of Health as well. Mr. Richardson.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure if it applies under here, but I had done a route with Meals on Wheels, and they had asked, that they could fall under the waiver because of just the nature of their stuff. Has that happened?
I don't know that level of detail because I have assigned Morgan and Jane that, so I don't know.
Okay.
That question, I think that phone call has happened.
Right. I'm pretty sure I told them to call you in your office. So
yeah, we're going to be extremely flexible. Yeah. Again, it's much different from most regulations. We're a very cut and dry sort of department.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Goldstone.
Couple of questions. I have all along really appreciated the nature of this process that brought folks from very different perspectives on the issue together on the Plastic Reduction Advisory Committee to end up with this regulation and not have it be a unilateral ban that was forced on people and instead trying to bring people into the conversation. So I really appreciate also the approach of the education approach. I'm curious, when you say quite a few waivers, are we talking dozens, hundreds?
Most establishments applied for at least one.
Okay.
Some, like a grocery store chain, I could see 3 or 4 pages worth, so maybe 30 for a particular food establishment that might have hundreds of non-compliance. Shaw's supermarkets, Windfall. I don't see this being a problem for a sit-down restaurant who only has to have takeout containers, but this is a big issue for the markets of town. I would say maybe about 80% have applied for at least one waiver. And I don't know whether some just ignored it, didn't fill it out, and said, we don't need it, and then we're going to find it during the inspection. I would say there shouldn't be a ton of what I call full-service sit-down dine-in restaurants that would need them. I can certainly see the markets needing them.
Okay. I'm curious whether, I feel like in some of these cases, there's the entire burden shouldn't be on the businesses to replace things, and the rest of us could do more of our part by bringing containers, but there are a lot of situations where we're not allowed to provide our own containers, right? So I can show up to, I was going to use a brand name, but I won't. I can show up to a coffee shop with my own mug and get a cup of tea. I cannot show up to the deli counter and ask for them to put well, I can ask. I get told no, to put cold cuts into my own container. Is there any ability for us as a town to shift that part of the system in order to also shift some of the responsibility in this situation to consumers as well as providers?
Yeah. Sorry, excuse me. So, yeah, I mean, one's potentially hazardous food and one isn't. Right, so a tea's not going to hurt anything. Although in a drive-through, I can't see a scenario where people would be handing their mugs to a clerk to clean them prior to filling them. So I think you're never going to get away from single use, but certainly going to your local coffee shop where you're handing it, and if it's clean, they could accept it and fill it. But any potentially hazardous foods, that would be a non-starter at this point in time. I wouldn't want people filling their own salad bar items with their own containers.
I don't remember the particular.
Then you run into, the food code, right? And then the food code is our primary reason why we're inspecting the restaurants.
So I think within the past week there was a story on Chronicle on this very subject, and a business that has somehow been able to allow people to come with their own containers. They have to be specifically, specific types of containers, but they're allowed to come and fill up their containers and not have to use, the containers from the store. So
yeah, part of that problem, that would be tear weights, because that would be a difficult thing. They'd have to tear everything, tear weights to make sure the container doesn't weigh. I'd be bringing the lightest possible one. There's certain things that we could do that for, but it would be relatively limited.
So we banned those single-use plastic bags, but what do you think about these ones that say reusable? They don't seem too different.
It's the thickness. So when that regulation was written, there was a thickness. I don't recall, I think 3 millimeters, I think, something of that nature. Anything over that was considered reusable. And that's how the bylaw was written. So if they're thick enough, they're thick enough.
Okay. At least they don't fly away like the old ones, huh?
But they're 10 times thick. They're about the same amount of plastic as 10 regular, small, thin ones too. So.
Okay.
I mean, maybe that's a separate bylaw altogether that came in, I think, maybe 5 to 8 years ago at least. No, maybe 10.
Yeah.
So.
It was longer than we think.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Anyone else?
Anything else?
Okay, thank you, Mr.
Thanks.
McGann.
Thank you.
Okay, the second item is to consider a vote to conditionally approve a conservation restriction for Zero Drift Road. Mr. Renshaw?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know we have a commission and committee report, so I'll be brief. The Compact of Cape Cod Conservation Trust Incorporated is seeking Select Board approval of a conservation restriction to be placed on property located at Zero Drift Road. Salt Pond Bird Sanctuary's owner of Zero Drift Road proposes to grant this CR, conservation restriction, to the Compact. This property is located, as you know, along Buzzards Bay and forms part of Black Beach. The conservation values to be protected by the conservation restriction include open space, floodplain, wildlife habitat, public access, biodiversity, water quality, wetlands, and climate change resiliency. As you all know, Select Board approval is required for any CR for land located in the town. Importantly, this parcel is one of many that are currently subject to ongoing litigation concerning the public's right of access to the roads connecting to Black Beach. It's for this reason the Town Council has, in consultation with my office, refrained from granting approval of the conservation restriction leading up until tonight's recommendation. At Town Council's recommendation, Salt Pond Bird Sanctuary is one of the plaintiffs bringing suit against the town in this matter, proposes that all parties to the litigation execute a stipulation to be filed with Land Court that will preserve the status quo of any rights to the public to or over this parcel at Zero Drift Road. The stipulation states, and I understand the stipulation was signed by Land Court Judge today, the stipulation states that the execution and registration of this conservation restriction shall not affect nor cause any prejudice to any claim, defense, or right of any party in this litigation, all of which shall be determined by the court. Mr. Chairman, Select Board, this conservation restriction has been reviewed and, with the above language included in the proposed stipulation to be submitted as part of the Black Beach litigation, has now been approved by Town Council. It's Town Manager's recommendation that Select Board approve the conservation restriction for Zero Drift Road as has been presented. And I understand the applicant's legal counsel is here if you have any questions that myself and Town Council.
The one question I have, Mr. Renshaw, is the matter on the agenda says to conditionally approve the CR, and yet the motion that you're recommending is that we go ahead and approve it. I just want to make sure
conditional
we
approval.
Understand what it is we're approving.
So I would ask that we revisit that. At the time that the agenda was submitted, I was prepared to ask for it to be conditionally approved because the stipulation had not yet been fully executed or filed. Late Friday afternoon, Judge Foster of the Land Court did approve a fully executed stipulation, and so now I request that you execute this evening. And sometimes you wait until the end of the meeting to sign this. I would, if you do vote to approve it, it would be great if you could sign it in the moment so that I can actually deliver it to the attorney so they can get this filed in the morning.
I am personally prepared to make the motion. I believe the beach should always be a public access. I'm not going to get involved discussing more on that, but that's ridiculous to me. The land and the water are for the people. I will make a motion to approve and execute the conservation restriction for Zero Driftwood Road as presented.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Mr. Brown.
Just want to make sure I'm clearly understanding this. So any dispute that's ongoing will not be impacted by this? This is just about the restriction and not any...
Yes, and it took us months to get where we are right now. I wanted to make sure that any rights to the public over that particular parcel were not going to be impacted by executing this conservation restriction, because this is permanent. This conservation restriction, once it's executed, cannot be altered without 2/3 vote of both houses of the legislature, and they're loath to do that. Here, I'm absolutely comfortable with the stipulation that any rights of the public, and I believe that there are public rights of access over this particular parcel, will be fully litigated by the land court.
Okay, I will second the motion.
Do you have a question?
I do have one, I guess, clarifying question. Knowing Salt Pond Bird Sanctuaries, if I'd pulled up this property record, I would have assumed that that was conservation land. But based on this, so it's been privately held, not under conservation until this point, and this conservation restriction with the Cape Cod Land Trust, or Compact, now puts it under conservation?
That's correct.
It's not a transfer. Okay.
It's privately owned before.
Okay, thank you.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. We conditionally signed this previously, so...
Oh, it's signed already.
I'm prepared to release it.
Great. Wonderful, thank you.
Take care of it and process it. And thank you for your
appreciate
hard
that.
work on this. I know there was a lot of give and take with the applicant. We appreciate your efforts in getting this done.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this.
Okay. All right, our next matter is a report of the Historical Commission. We're going to have Mr. Valley, newly appointed chair.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, board members. My name is Christian Valley, and I'm the current chair of the Historic Commission. I assume you got my report, or the report that was sent out, so I'm not going to go into too much detail other than to say that it's been a good year for the Historic Commission. We had 96 applications, 70 of which we approved administratively, and 26 of which we had public hearings. As you know, Ed Haddad, the prior chair, rotated off in June, and so I am now serving as the chair. My commission is up in June of '26, and as I've said to Ed many times, I'm keeping the seat warm for him when he comes back. A couple interesting projects, things that we're working on. One is the Historic District marker signs, which we are actually in production right now, and we're working with the DPW, I know, to get them up hopefully within the next month or so. We're also I'm also pleased to announce that we have 2 great new members of the board, both architects. One's a landscape architect, Chris Bucacino, and the other is an architect, Jeremy Kraus. And thanks to the town, we have a new position in the preservation planner, and that's Annie Dean, who was a prior board member, and she is really supporting our board very, very strongly and giving us lots of support. A couple interesting projects that I'll just highlight that we've worked on. One is Hooked on the corner here. We did a lot of work with them when they were applying for their permit. I think that the building came out nicely. The Weeks building, of course, after they had the fire, we did some work with them to get that back up and running. And then, interestingly enough, the National Academy of Science building in Woods Hole, which is now owned by a private individual, came before us, and the work they're doing there is exceptional in preserving that building. And I would, if you have a chance, I recommend a chance to look at it. It's really an amazing job. So we have a great board, and look forward to the next few months. Any questions? Happy to answer.
Mr. Brown.
Still expediting those administrative approvals the way Ed did?
Yes, yep, I am. Yep, good. A lot of good administrative approvals, yep.
It's been a big improvement, so
yep.
Thank you for that.
No, simple requests are expedited on a daily basis when I get them.
Great.
Curious with the other, you said 26 that you actually took under consideration, if there are themes in those that stand out, recurring issues or that you're coming up against?
Not really, no. I mean, there's a lot of renovations and modifications in the districts that we work with, and you know, we try to be as helpful as possible and to get them through the process, make recommendations. We've had some really good, solid applications lately with some really good, solid architects that are familiar with the process. So it's been a pretty, I would say, streamlined process. Still a lot of projects going on in town in the districts, but most of them are really renovations and additions and modifications to existing homes.
Okay. Mr. Richardson, then Mr. Reed.
Anything you need from us, or anything we should have our eyes on?
No, not that I can think of, other than just, you know, a lot of help with the signs, that we got through, and no, I think we're in good shape for now. We certainly will speak up if we need anything.
Great.
Thank you.
Mr. Richardson took my question that I typically ask of committee chairs and whatnot, but just one question for you. We ask this of the new members that we voted in to be on your committee. Lots of times historic commissions are people are scared of it. They're assuming that you know, it's a line in the sand, perhaps back into the 1800s of what something needs to look like. Can you just discuss some of the things you've seen the commission deal with in terms of how you're modernizing and yet still preserving the character, whether it be with sustainable materials and resilience efforts, or, you know, a commitment to partnering and less policing? You know, your take on the historic commission right now.
Yeah, so I've been on the board since 2016, and I've always viewed the board not as an obstructionist board, but as a board that helps to get projects through. But we offer guidance and you know, we've approved PVC materials for trim. We do a lot of work. There are a lot of homes now in the flood zone that require to be elevated, so there's lots of different design details there. You know, the work we do in Woods Hole with some of the folks down there in terms of what they're looking to do. We have, I think we've been a very good board. I think you'll find that we're maybe one of the easier boards, not easier, but we really try to work with people to help them get through the process, but also provide a service and say, hey, why don't you look at this or why don't you look at that? And we've had a few people come back to us and say, you know, after you gave us the recommendations, whether it was a dormer or something like that, they come back and say, you know, we went back and looked at it, we really like what you suggested. So that's really what our goal is. The goal is not to stop anything, because that's not really, doesn't do anybody any good. So, and I'm a builder in town, so I really have it in, you know, I want to see things done, but done well. So, and I understand that, you know, builders are up against certain, whether it's, like I said, PVC trim or some new alternative windows that we've approved, but also keeping in mind the very distinct historic characteristics of this town, of which, you know, I would say there's a lot. And also Main Street. Main Street's a perfect example. You know, we approve a lot of the signs on Main Street, from basically the Village Green down to the edge of the district, which would be where Hanush Jewelers is. And so a lot of those signs, some new signs, some new artwork, we're very much in favor of that. So.
Cool. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Valley.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for
Thank
that.
you.
Okay, moving on to the report from the Water Quality Management Committee. Mr. Rafferty.
Good evening. I'll see if I can make it work.
We have you down for 15 minutes.
All right.
Steve, you need a hand with that, or you're all set?
I don't know. Probably need a hand. You've done this more than I have. I know that my program's loaded up. I just don't know how to turn it on. Enter. There we go.
You're going just
Things should come up.
capital F, Falmouth 01.
I have to type that in? It says password. That isn't it spelled correctly.
Capital F, and then 01.
There we go, good.
You have been pretty busy this year.
We've got a couple things done, yeah. So anyways, I'm Steve Rafferty. I live in Precinct 2, and how do I start this? I'll just scroll down the easy way.
F5.
That's fine. F5, thank you. Bingo. So this is our annual report. And you know, there's a couple new members of your board, and so some of you know what the Water Quality Management Committee does. Some of you may not know what we do. So I thought I would start off by telling you what we do. And so we sort of serve several functions all at once, but one of them is that we evaluate the applicability of alternatives, okay? We spend time looking at things and evaluating them. We also are the advocacy board for things that will improve the watershed and/or wastewater projects. And we also provide a forum for public participation and information. So during the last year under evaluations, the big one was, because the town's got to create watershed plans, and in the whole watershed planning process, there's an item that says, despite everything else you do, you have to have a contingency plan that says, if you don't get credits for other things that you might be wanting to do, you have to have a plan that says how you're going to get there with sewers and innovative alternative systems. So we looked at all of that, and the map on the right-hand side is what I call the sort of boundary condition. The areas in green or dark green on the bottom are areas that either have sewers or are currently in the comprehensive wastewater management plan to be sewered. We took bids last week on the T-ticket phase 1, and we cannot expand the sewer area until we have an outfall. So there's a little bit of the where are we at and where are we getting to exercise. So we said if the status quo remains, how big an area, how many homes would have to put IAs in? And those are the blue areas on this map. That's a very large area. that would have to get IAs. So we've put at least some scale to the contingency plan and made people aware that it's not a minor thing, it's a fairly major thing, and there's a lot of work to be done. The other thing we did during the last year is we evaluated the feasibility of a permeable reactive barrier. This is a thing where you put something in the ground to change the nitrogen in the ground. It looked like a good location. Permeable reactive barriers are good when you have a concentrated plume of nitrogen. We evaluated that, we prepared, and we actually received a grant to install a permeable reactive barrier. And then the other thing we do under the evaluation is we continue to hear where we're at with the urine diversion test program and where that's at and where it's going. Other evaluations. We review the actions taken by other Cape and Island communities. We are not alone in having to deal with the nitrogen issue. Every community is taking their own approach to it. Every community is at a different stage or spot in it. So we keep track of what's going on. We look at what Board of Health actions have been taken in other communities and how they impact us. And then the other thing is the state's criteria says IA systems should perform at 10 milligrams per liter. Most of them are permitted right now for 19 or 18. Some of them are getting down to lower numbers, but we're keeping very close watch on how these different systems are getting there with proving out their systems and whether they're going to be commercially viable or not. And then the other thing we have been looking at is looking at the projected costs of various approaches. Doug attends a number of our meetings. People throw numbers around. It's 70,000 here, it's 40,000 there, it's 20,000 here. So we're trying to continue to look at where that information is coming from, what the basis for that is, and helping to set the boundaries for what these costs might be. So where do we advocate for? Well, one of the biggest things we do is we've done our work and looked at where grant opportunities are. We've advocated for certain grants. We've prepared and submitted multiple grant requests. We got 2 DEP natural resource nitrogen sensitive grants for watershed plans evaluation covering the Little Pond and the Great Pond watersheds, as well as the Megansett, Fiddler's Cove, and Rand's Canal watersheds. So we've done a bunch of work, sort of base work, that will feed into the watershed plans in those areas. We also obtained a $9,281 grant from the Southeast New England Mini Capital Grant, and we used that money to buy data loggers, which are now in Perch Pond. Actually, they got taken out a week ago since it's wintertime. But we're collecting data on Perch Pond, which is that little cove up on the west side of Great Pond, because that's the area that will get the most benefit as the new sewers come in, and we want to have a baseline to know what we're doing. So no cost to the town. We got a grant, we put them in. And the last one, as I mentioned before, we got $448,500 from the National Estuaries Program Watershed Grant Program to install and operate a permeable reactive barrier at Snug Harbor, West Falmouth, which, for those of you that take the shore road, they take that corner and you come around that little corner. The wastewater plant is up there. That's legacy nitrogen coming down. There's a group of homes, and we're going to put a PRB in, and 2 different types, and monitor how they work effectively over time. And you'll see some improvement in West Falmouth Harbor from that work. Advocacy.
Could I stop you for a second?
Absolutely.
How long will that take for that barrier for us to get some results from that? Is it an ongoing?
So once the barrier is installed, we'll be measuring upstream and downstream. Takes a short amount of time. I'm going to say 90 to 120 days for the biology to really get established. And once it's established, we'll start measuring on the downstream side a lower nitrogen level. So got 6 months or more. We're thank you, Maura has been reviewing some agreements we have to make with landowners to put some of these wells in on their property and everything. So I see in the next 6 or 8 months we will be at the point where we're putting this stuff in, and then probably a year or so from now they'll be operating and we'll have results.
And then what? What happens with the results? What?
So to the extent that we can show that we're reducing nitrogen to the harbor, it should show an improvement in water quality in the harbor.
And possibly use it elsewhere?
No, the nitrogen doesn't come out. The nitrogen in the ground gets converted through the bacterial process to become nitrogen and just escape off into the atmosphere.
I mean, would we use that reactive barrier in other locations?
Good, excellent question. So where people are at with the permeable reactive barrier concept is people have come to the conclusion, So think about hundreds of feet across the front of each property. You know, putting across hundreds of feet of each property is expensive and may or may not be efficient. So the exercise is to look for places where there's a concentration of nitrogen, a nitrogen plume, if you will. One of the more successful ones right now is down Cape. It's near a middle school where they had a septic system, and they were able to put this permeable reactive barrier downstream of that septic system. In this case, because of the upstream effect of the town's wastewater treatment plant and some large developed areas between 28 and Snug Harbor, this seems like an ideal location to put in a few hundred feet and see what we get.
Thank you.
Heather.
Similar line of questioning. I mean, we've got one in Wacoit. We'll have this one. How many of the permeable reactive barriers are there kind of out there where we have data or will soon have data? And at what point might we have enough information to say, yes, this is a cost-effective way we should really be looking at in that contingency plan, looking at how this does fit in on a broader scale to try to reduce some of that IA need?
Yep. So the one in Wacoit works. It's a very limited sort of installation, if you will. We did one on Shorewood Drive over the last 4 years to demonstrate how long it would work with the vegetable oils. That's treated in a very small area, but it helped to prove out the vegetable oil and reinjection period times or whatnot. There is a permeable reactive, there are two other permeable reactive barriers I know about in town that are on private property, put on by private landowners to try to just be good citizens, and I can't tell you exactly where they are, okay? So those are the four I know of in Falmouth. There is the one down, I think it's Orleans by the middle school, and there's 2 or 3 others around. There's a couple in Rhode Island. I think we have a pretty good handle on the cost of these things per linear foot at this point. We did put in a grant application for an area up in the Wacoit end. We did not get accepted on that one. But again, we keep trying to look for lack of a better word, hot spots, okay?
Yep.
I don't think they replace IAs necessarily, but for places where there's a concentration from certain things, maybe it's a development of sorts that's got distance between wherever their septic systems are and the receiving bodies or the downstream bodies. It might be a discussion item with the planning board going forward.
But, and is this a technology that is at a place that it can be in our contingency plan in terms of DEP approval?
This is not a trial. We're past the trial stage of this technology. Now it's a case of finding locations where it's cost effective.
Great.
And we think Snug Harbor is cost effective, and we're hoping to get enough data over the next couple of years to really prove that out.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Again, staying with the advocacy, we provide the wastewater department in town with support for town meeting articles relative to the watersheds. You know, we supported the funding for the construction of Phase 1. One of the things our committee does is we divide up all of the town meeting members between all of us, and we reach out to different people that we know and let them know why it's good to vote for those articles. We're supporting the funding for the outfall program. We get regular updates from Amy on where the outfall is, costs and issues. And we're supporting funding for the development of the town-wide watershed management plan, which was approved at fall town meeting. One of the bigger items over the last year that we've spent time on is, I think I'm well known for saying if you have to put an IA in your yard, it's like buying a new car and burying it in your backyard. You're going to spend a lot of money, and hopefully you can afford to do it. You know, we all have to pay for a new car once in a while and figure out how we're going to pay for it. One of the things is, a while back, the state established a state tax code that says if you're a primary homeowner in the community and you have state taxes you have to pay, you can, over 6 years, get up to $18,000 back, up to 60% of the cost of the work you have to do to either hook to the sewer or put an IA in. However, you have to have enough money to be paying state taxes. So for those of you that are a resident, maybe it's fixed income or whatever, it doesn't really do you much. So with the help of Representative Vieira, we drafted, you guys supported, and we submitted a bill called House Bill 4082 at this point to change it from a non-refundable to a refundable. In other words, it would apply to anybody who had to do this. We are currently before the Joint Committee on Revenue. We've done presentations. We've reached out to a number of agencies across the Cape, from Association for Preservation of Cape Cod, other representatives who've submitted letters of support. I just found out yesterday that they've extended the comment period, so myself and a couple of other people on the committee will go into phase 2 of finding people to advocate for this change with the Department of Revenue. I am a bit of a realist, okay? I suspect that we will struggle to get out of committee, but I want to make a point of the value of this and get more people on the Cape to back it, and expect we would come back next year again and respond to whatever the Department of Revenue has. If they feel it's too big a number, let's find a better number. If they feel the fact that it's sort of open-ended, that it doesn't say this will expire in 20 years, because that's what we have, we can add that sort of language to it. But people on the committee, we put a lot of time and energy into getting this to a point that it's an actual proposed piece of legislation, and drumming up support for it. And more will need to be done. Okay, moving on to the third thing we do, which is to provide a public forum for discussion of water quality and wastewater issues. How am I doing on time?
You got about 2 minutes.
Okay, we meet twice a month. Everybody shows up, 4:30 to 6:30 every other Wednesday. Public's invited to participate. One of the things about the public participation is towns spend a lot of money putting sewers in to the Little Pond McCoy area, and we can actually see improvements in water quality. So the money, we're getting a return on investment in terms of the water quality getting better. And I'll tell you, I've been on the board long enough to tell you we chose that because it was the worst estuary of all. And we figured if we can clean that one up, we can clean them all up. Real quick here, this just shows you where the current planned sewers area are. We hope to expand those areas through the watershed planning process and permission on the outfall. And in 2026, we're going to work with the permeable reactive barrier. We're going to expand a little bit to look at how IA management plans. We have a few hundred at most IAs right now in the town. When we have thousands, there's a lot more to be done about keeping track of that information, making sure they're properly installed and worked on. So we're working on that. And then we're going to continue to engage with other communities on the success and challenges in implementing their watershed permits. We're going to continue to support the DPW in town as needed. And lastly, a big shout out to everybody on my committee. I might be the only person on my committee without a doctorate. Everybody else is smarter than me and more intelligent. And I think that's why they have me as chairman, so I can just, sit there and tell them what to do. No, but it's a great
Is that how it works?
Yeah, you're doing a great job.
I figured out that.
You're doing a great job. No, I have to just, I can't say enough about everybody on this committee, how committed they are to the town, how knowledgeable they are, and how we see our exercise as not to make some mathematical number with the state. Our job is to make these estuaries cleaner. There's fish, there's crabs, there's a return of some eelgrass into Little Pond, and we want to turn that around for all of the estuaries. That's our goal, and I'm open to questions.
What do you hear about other towns meeting their goals with respect to watershed permits and so forth? You mentioned it before.
Yeah, great question. So a lot of the towns have their own issues about whether they have multiple estuaries or one estuary. A couple of the communities have made a big commitment to building some serious wastewater infrastructure. Between Mashpee and Yarmouth and Down Cape, they've gone through the process and overrides to get 150 million in the queue and getting started with the whole sewer project. Then other places, Wellfleet in particular, did some work through their Board of Health. They got a lot of pushback on the boundary condition for IAs. They're going to probably revise their Board of Health regulation. We're keeping an eye on that. Same thing out on the island. So I would say that people are making progress with their watershed plans. A couple of them are at the point where they probably will get submitted this year, and we'll watch how the DEP acts or responds to them. It's different in every community, but we're talking to each other.
Well, that's important. It's a big Cape.
Yep.
Anyone else? Mr. Reed?
Just a couple quick questions, Mr. Rafferty. Little Pond, congratulations. Enjoy seeing that we're improving there. Some of the scientists with whom I work mentioned that we're getting good data on new nitrogen or the prevention of new nitrogen, but the need for more sensors deeper for old nitrogen? Are we considering that at all?
We've not brought a funding request forward for that. We have looked a couple of times at what type of monitoring and sensoring we should get or do. We've actually developed a couple of RFQs and got numbers from people.
Okay.
We haven't advanced that at this moment in time. I have a little bit of history with the Boston Harbor project, in which biology is an interesting thing. It takes a while to sort of turn its corner, but when it turns its corner, things sometimes accelerate fairly quickly in terms of, the benthic. We're talking about a benthic demand for the nitrogen and how that turns over. So right now we're putting our money where it's, you're the select board. I will come to you with a very large request for a lot of stuff if you tell me that you've got money you want to spend. But for now, we've been trying to focus on some things. We'll probably circle back at some point at Little Pond, I would say in 4 or 5 years, to come revisit Little Pond, if I'm just going to pick that out. It's one of the 2 estuaries that said if you open up the inlet, it would improve the flushing action of it. And so rather than tackle the benthic demand on Little Pond, I would suggest the town is better spending money to rebuild the outlet from Little Pond and get better flushing action, and that will help to clean up the subsurface.
And 2 points that I have just for our group here. Page 6, there's a lot of funding advocacy that the folks are doing. A big one, the outfall program development. We're going to need to see how the heck we're going to afford a very expensive police station and an outfall, so getting that on the agenda for the future of how we're going to fund that as a town. And I think the other one is you talked about the new IA systems and the equitable nature of that. For sewer, people connecting to sewer, there is an incentive for 0% interest over a long period of time. Have we thought about these kind of incentives for people that are installing IA systems?
I believe it's something that we are starting to think about at the request of the Board of Health, actually. So it is something that I think we'll be addressing in the new year.
Cool, thank you.
Renshaw, anything to add to that?
No, that's accurate. Board of Health has been looking at it.
Okay, thank you.
It's in conversation. You will be hearing more about it over this upcoming year.
Thank you.
Only thing I want to add is thank you. I love your guys' process, how data-driven it is, and how you try to fit a square peg into a round hole and a bunch of different solutions. And I also, from my work perspective, I met with some of you guys, Senator Fernandez's office. Your advocacy on that bill has been fantastic, and there's a reason these get extended is because you guys did a good job. So keep up the good work on that, and I know the Cape delegation is really paying attention to that and wants to work on that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, it was my pleasure to speak to you. I'll come back anytime you want to hear from me.
All right, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for your committee's work. It's very good. And thanks to Jonathan Kaufman for coming up with the idea of the refundable tax credit.
Yeah.
And Representative Vieira to try and bring it home.
Right.
Thank you. Okay, our next matter, youth baseball field project update. Mr. Renshaw?
Just wanted Peter McConerty, our DPW director, and Gail, the engineer, architect, designer, I should say, to give an update real briefly, kind of let everybody know where we're at. Peter, do you have a slide presentation or any comments?
Yes, we do. Kyle from Gale Associates will bring up the slide deck. Just wanted to give a very brief position where we are right now. It's been almost about a year. We're working up on a year for the site closure and when we started working on this site. Last January, when the site was closed, we brought on Arcadis Environmental, and we worked very hard and diligently to prepare a concept drawing that would be acceptable through Mass DEP. With that, we came up with some engineering cost estimates, and we went through town meeting in spring, got some funding through town meeting in the spring. At that time, we brought on Gale Associates to do the facilities, the above-ground work for the facilities. And over the summer months, Arcadis, the town of Falmouth, and Gale has been working through a proposed design. We went through 25, concept 2550. We're at 75 now, and actually we're going towards final design. But I think what Kyle from Gale has to show, it's pretty impressive for the site. I think you're going to be impressed with the final conditions of that site will start. So I'll bring up Kyle. And also we have our park superintendent if there's any questions on the parks or the recreation side of it. Did you need to load anything? Or?
I think I see them right there.
Should be there.
Those are the ones.
That's
from,
convenient.
Yeah, those are the ones from last week that you sent.
All right, perfect. I have a zip drive. I do, if we can put the new ones up, I don't know if that's somewhere over here. That's perfect. I can start talking. I can get there. Perfect. Thank you, Peter. Same one anyways. All right, perfect. I don't know if there's a way to full screen this. Let's try that. There we go. All right. Well, good evening, Select Board members. Good to meet you. My name is Kyle Rowan. I'm a project manager with M.G.L Associates. We've been working with the town of Falmouth, DPW specifically, on behalf of the Trotting Park Youth Baseball Project. So for those of you who are not familiar with this site, I'm sure everyone pretty much is, but just for a bit of background, the existing conditions from the sky look pretty similar to what you're seeing here in a way. It's comprised of 3 natural turf youth baseball diamonds, a very aged and worn bituminous parking lot with half gravel, half pavement, 2 CMU block buildings, which you see on that drawing there, 2 press boxes at field 1 and 2, so the 2 on the left. Limited lighting. There's lighting on field 1 at the top left. There's a little bit of lighting on the parking lot and pedestrian areas, and then just other associated athletic-related facilities throughout the site. As noted, many of the surfaces and the facilities have surpassed their serviceable and usable life. In addition to this, the town is aware that a majority of that limit of work that you see there is situated over an existing historical landfill and therefore requires capping. So as sort of a basic way of breaking down the intents of this project, it really comes down to 2 things. One is to reconstruct this facility more or less in kind to maintain the existing use, but also to improve its usability and obviously upgrade all of those surfaces and infrastructures and facilities. The second priority of the project, of course, is to provide a suitable landfill cap sufficient to meet DEP permitting requirements. So starting with priority 1, which is the proposed improvements, which is what you see on your screen here. To simplify it, basically, most of this site will be reconstructed. There are a few things that will remain. So the parking lot batting tunnels, which you see on the very top left, they're a little bit faded out, that little rectangle there. Those are going to remain. The 2 CMU block buildings, so right there in the middle of the screen, those are going to remain, as well as the athletic lighting at field 1 on the top and the tension netting backstop at field 1. Both the athletic lighting and backstop were installed in 2023. So our goal, of course, is to maintain those as they're so new and situate them in the proposed improvements. So what are we proposing for the improvements? Like I said, in kind to what's existing on site, but of course improved. We have 3 natural grass baseball fields, youth 60-foot diamonds. Each diamond will have covered dugouts, 2 each. There will be ADA access to all fields, paved ADA access. There will be a new maintenance drive running around the back. You can kind of see it wraps around the perimeter outside of the property, tying in the 3 outfields. We'll have 3 new scoreboards and a brand new irrigation system, which will be specific to the athletic playing areas, not really irrigating the rest of the site. We're trying to limit water use, particularly given what the site is on. So it's specific to the fields. Getting a little more specific into each field, on field 1, like I said, that existing backstop and lighting will remain. We will be adding a new modular 2-story press box in similar location to where the one is now. That'll have a PA system. There will be 2 bullpens on either side of the field, an elevated seating plaza kind of near the existing concessions building. You can see that beige rectangle. It might be a little hard to see. It's labeled on the plan. So that will be an at-grade with the building seating plaza that kind of juts out with a retaining wall. And Just above that, you have about 150 seats worth of terrace seating, which is seating that's built into the existing slope, which we're trying to utilize where we can. Zooming in on Field 2, you're going to have a new tension netting backstop to match the backstop that we have on Field 1. New athletic lighting, which will be 3 poles, as well as using the 4th pole, which will service both fields, 1 and 2. You can see it between the 2 there in that little triangle of paving. Field 2 will also have terrace seating. As you can see on the bottom left, it's only about a 50-seat capacity, a little less, but again, using the existing slope to our advantage. Other than the fields themselves, you'll have a brand new bituminous parking lot. At the moment, that's 103 spaces, 8 of which will be ADA accessible, van accessible. The parking lot will be lit for security, parking, and pedestrian purposes. What else do we got here? Landscaping, not much to it. Pretty much what you see on here that is green is going to be grass, obviously. The one variation there is along that slope that exists between the parking lot and the fields. We're going to try and make that as low maintenance as we can, so that's going to be a low maintenance erosion control type planting like switchgrass or something similar. So that won't actually require mowing. That'll just kind of be its own thing year round and maintain the slope as best as we can. I already spoke on irrigation. Again, it's specific to the 3 fields. So that's priority 1, right, is the proposed improvements. Priority 2 is, of course, the landfill capping. So just to give a very brief explanation of where we're at with that so far in the design, after discussion with DEP with the assistance of Arcadis and the DPW, in construction, all of the material, the existing soils on site are going to remain on site. We will not be transporting potentially contaminated soils from one landfill to another. In addition to that, one of the most significant items from the DEP requirements so far is that we will be adding 2 feet of clean soil material above pretty much this entire site. That is the cap of the landfill. That will have its own geotextile barrier at the subgrade of that cap, and pretty much, again, everything you see that has color will be raised 2 feet with the exception of the parking lot and some of the paved areas, which can have a smaller cap due to the fact that they are capped by a paved surface. In addition to that, there will be some additional foundation finished surface supports. Given that this is on a landfill, it's a little bit more prone to settlement. So what that entails is over excavation at the items with foundations, additional structural fill, and under paved areas, we'll be using a geotextile geogrid fabric, which supports the paving from underneath. Other than that, that's pretty much it for the project priorities. Some other updates, permitting-wise, relatively limited on this project. We have been in discussion with the town planner, building commissioner, who have confirmed site plan review will not be required. We are not in jurisdictional resource areas. And really what that means is the bulk of this permitting is going to be through the Massachusetts DEP, and they're the ones who are going to approve ultimately our design meeting their requirements to cap the landfill. So the last item I want to touch on is just the project schedule, to give an update on that. As Peter had mentioned, we've gone through conceptual, schematic, 50% design. As of November 24th, we were at 75% design, which is pretty much, the actual engineering drawings are a lot more detailed than what you see here. We're not cartoonists, but that's sort of what you get at 75%. It's sufficient for permitting, renderings, that type of thing, and basically locks in the overall layout of what this project will be, and from there we fill in the detail. So I believe, as Peter had also mentioned, our next submission is a 90%, which is going to be targeted for the end of January. That's actually the document that's going to be utilized for the DEP permitting. And then after that, with their comment and ideally approval, we move forward to bid documents and a bidding period from late February to late March, and then construction beginning as early as April, likely continuing through to September. But regardless of when this construction completes, because these are natural grass fields, they will require a resting period of the full fall. So the earliest beneficial use for that athletic portion of that facility will be spring of 2027. That's pretty much it.
Thank you. Mr. Richardson?
Thank you very much. One question. So I'm more familiar with soccer, so I'm at the field down the road. But when, are all 3 fields used at the same time usually? Like, I know it's youth baseball, but if someone pimps a home run from field 1, that ball's going into the second field. Is there netting in between each field, or is that, am I thinking?
We do
way
have
too-
netting, so
okay.
you can't see it on this, again, a bit cartoon-like rendering, I apologize for that, but there is, I can point it out, there's netting here on this field, here on that field, that one doesn't need it, of course, there's netting
Right.
up to this point and up to that point.
Gotcha,
So
great.
The 3 are protected from.
Oh, I see the backstop netting covers, okay,
Yeah.
great. Yeah, because I think this is one thing when we look at revenue sources. I referee soccer in Nauset High School, brings in a tremendous amount of revenue from there. They rent out their high school for their soccer tournaments, and I think that that's one area that Falmouth is lacking compared to the Cape, other towns on the Cape. So when we look at an investment and how much that this could bring to the town, not only because we owe it to the youth baseball kids in our town, but also as a potential revenue driver for hosting tournaments and stuff. So I thank you for these designs. I think they're great.
Couple of questions, one about the design and then one about the process you're in. Is there accessible seating at either fields 2 or 3? I know there's access to the fields, but is there any seating area, accessible seating at those fields?
So yes, at field 2, we are going to have.
You can use a cursor to.
Yeah, I could do that. That'd be smart. So at field 2, we're going to have limited accessible seating next to the dugouts over here.
Okay.
And that'll be kind of adjacent to this terrace seating area here. So we may add a little bit more of a bump out. You know, typically when you have a bleacher system or something similar at a small field like this that doesn't have an accessible component built into it, you just put space next to it. And that's ultimately what's going to happen here. Field 3 doesn't currently have spectator seating at the moment. In conversation with the DPW, that was deemed not necessary at this field. This one's more of just the practice, you know, that type of thing, whereas Field 1 and Field 2, those are going to be the ones with lighting, with a PA system, with a press box, so those are the primary fields for viewing.
Great. My other question on the process is whether there's been outreach and conversation with youth baseball groups in town, or whether that is planned as part of the process.
Got a thought on that, Peter?
Yeah, I can speak to it. Thank you, Kyle. Yeah, so we, at the beginning of this process, we had the public meetings. We working with the Youth Baseball League and the coaches, and we basically, you know, the design is the same. We're rebuilding what is back out there. We can reach out to the coaches again. I will say that right now, I'm trying to stay away from value engineering. We have been doing some value engineering, but the cost of this project is getting to creep up to exceed the funds that are available. So working with Kyle, Public Works is going to come in and we're going to be hauling that material. And we're looking to haul that material from our pit down to, that's a $700,000 savings for the site. If we didn't do that, this site, we wouldn't be able to build it. We're also, for Public Works, we're going to be installing a new septic system from the concession stand. If we didn't do that, that's another $30,000, $40,000 to do that. So Public Works is working with Gale and Acatus to do some of this work. So there's not a lot of room to do more improvements that we have. I think the design that we have right now is pretty inclusive of what was there, and the seating arrangement, if you did see it in the rendering form, it's pretty impressive that the way they show it. But I think where we are right now is we will consult with the youth baseball, but we're at a point now that adding additional components is going to make it difficult on us. We don't want to start doing alternatives. We want to keep what we have and be able to work from there. And we're still working on that right now with the cost estimates with the consultant. As everyone knows, over the last 4 or 5 years, costs continue to rise, and this being on an old landfill doesn't help. I mean, there's going to be a lot of material to bring in and to just to be able to work on the OSHA 40 and to be able to have the contractors work on those fields. So, but yeah, we can bring in the coaches to work with them. We have, I know Jeremiah has been reaching out with. Working with the group, so we can do that. But they under the knowledge and understanding that, you know, it's going to be recreated in its old form, just new.
Kyle, with respect to Field 3, would it be possible in the future to have seating there, if that was a decision that we wanted to make at some point?
Yeah, I think, again, to Peter's point, cost-wise, we do have to be sensitive to overextend ourselves any further than what we're doing so far, but certainly you'll have the space on either, to either side of either dugout, on the other side of the walkways. You could do like a semi-permanent 47-seat aluminum bleacher. Those are the ones you typically see all over the place, about 5 rows back. So we're certainly going to have the space for that. We'll be mindful of leaving the space for that, and that's something that can be brought in at any time.
You'll have to wear a batting helmet.
It'll be tight. Yes, Mr. Reed.
This might be more for Mr. McConerty. Before my time, we approved the permeable, or the barrier that's going to be put in there. Can you just speak to the type of barrier that is? Is it a chemical barrier or a physical object barrier? Because as both of you have mentioned that this is being built on top of an old unregulated dump. Just want to make sure that the barrier that we're putting in there will actually keep us safe for a long time.
The barrier, it's a geotextile fabric, and right now we are in the process of submitting actual materials to the DEP. That's going to be part of the permitting process. So we need Arcadis's input on that a little bit. So admittedly, we don't have a direct answer on that right now, but whatever barrier we do end up going with, that's going to be an integral part of permitting through the DEP, and ultimately they're going to be the ones who make that determination on what we use in the design.
Mr. Brown.
It sounded like the lighting poles will be tall enough to remain. That's good news. Any chance, I know I asked you this at the previous meeting about drilling a well for the irrigation, and you said that's probably not a good idea because of the unknown nature of what's below the ground, but any chance we could go a little further over by the skate park and put a well? And then I'd just love to get all these irrigation systems off the town water if possible. I know that's an added cost, but just curious if it's even feasible.
That can be something that we can look at, taking it off the town water at a future date. You can see the access road where it's coming, the gray access road where it's coming, and that's the main off of Gifford Street. And then the white one on top is the one that goes to the rear fields. That's where the water main is coming down right now, and right next to the concession stand is where the meter pit is. So if we had to go at a different area, looking further down the road, we could put another well in. We wouldn't be able to go in under the easements, but we could put it down the road, and we can look at bringing something back and disconnecting it from the water. But I think where we are right now, drilling a well and running a whole new well, it would just, under this, it would go under a future project. It wouldn't go under.
Right, I just want to make sure we can have some flexibility and not have to rip up a parking lot to do it. Is that?
So I think what we would do is we would be looking, if we were where the meter pit is next to the concession stand in the green. So we would be looking to stay in the green, and you'd want to stay in that clean fill barrier. We would not be digging below the 2 feet. And the other thing we're talking about is with the design on this is the fences. Anything that's below 2 feet, if there's going to be future repairs, that barrier is going to follow the lane. So we will not be digging into the old landfill at any time. It'll always be a clean barrier. Right. It'll be on top. The geotextile barrier is usually an orange color or a yellow color. When you start digging down and you start seeing orange or yellow.
Well, if it was just irrigation, it wouldn't need to be deep. It would just be seasonal anyway.
It's usually like 6 inches deep,
yeah.
5 to 6 inches deep.
Okay. Very good, thanks.
Yes.
One last question, actually, for you, Mr. McConerty, which is outside the scope of the baseball fields, but given that we're now grappling with what is underground there, in your professional opinion, would it be worth putting monitoring wells downstream groundwater-wise from this to have a better awareness of whether there's anything coming out from this area into the groundwater?
So under the existing contract with Arcadis, there's already monitoring wells installed, and they're sticking up. If you go down there, they're sticking up about 3 feet. Those monitoring wells will remain downstream, and we'll continue to be monitoring those. That's part of the DEP plan that they're going to be looking at, is the groundwater monitoring. So we did install them, yeah.
So that's downstream, but still within this kind of property, this development area?
They're all throughout the project limits here.
They're throughout the project limits, not downstream on another project, but they're throughout the project limits. So we can we already know the ground flow and where the water's flowing, so per DEP and through CADIS, through our LSP, they're going to be doing groundwater monitoring on that.
Great, thank you.
All right, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we are going to have a presentation and discussion of affordable housing tax exemption for year-round rental properties. We have 20 minutes. Mr. Renshaw, would you give us an introduction on this?
I will, Mr. Chairman. The representatives, there's a committee, subcommittee formed with Affordable Housing Committee. Mrs. Liz Klein is here tonight to kind of go over the results and a recommendation for the affordable housing property tax exemption. Liz, you have 20 minutes. I want to try to build in because I know there's going to be a lot of questions.
Yeah, I'm going to go.
The floor is yours. Take your
Snappy
time.
as I
Important
can.
topic.
All right. Thank you so much for being here. As Mr. Renshaw said, my name is Liz Klein. I'm a member of the Falmouth Affordable Housing Committee, and I'm here today on behalf of that committee. They did vote that we were all unanimously in favor of forwarding this recommendation to the Select Board this evening. So just some quick background. This is we're proposing that we adopt some legislation that came out in 2023 as part of that large state housing bill that came through. And this is one of the components of that. And it's specifically designed at targeting towns that offer this exemption to people for renting to a year-round individual. So it's really targeting that rental market and using a tax exemption as a way to incentivize property owners to do that type of rental. Just to give us some context of where this might fit in the broader context of our housing production plan, which we have a couple of slides here. One of the main goals of the housing production plan, goal 4, was to increase the creation of affordable rental units. And as we know, Falmouth lacks the number of rental units that would define a healthy community. We sit around 17% of our housing stock is used for year-round rental, and a healthy community would expect more, about 30%. And I made a note that we actually already had someone tonight speak to that urgent need, and I did not cue her to do that. That happened completely separately. And so, tackling that through this approach would be consistent with one of these goals that was approved as part of our 2024 housing production plan. And not only do I want to point out that we have a limited number of rentals, but the rentals that we have are high-priced, and they make it difficult for individuals to afford their rent, with a majority of people renting in Falmouth identifying as significantly cost-burdened. It's also Strategy 22. So this is a screenshot from that housing production plan. We realize the text is rather small, but I just wanted to put it in there because we're really emphasizing that this plan was put together and signed off on by the town as a way to guide our actions in the next so many years with respect to housing. And so as a committee, we have been working through these various strategies identified in that plan to help organize our work. When you're faced with such a large challenge, it's a clarifying way for us to go about our efforts. And so this Strategy 22 specifically calls out using tax incentives as a way to help offer more year-round affordable rentals to individuals, and specifically calls out the fact that tax exemptions avoid some of the challenges that some other means of rental creation might encounter, such as deed restrictions, going through a lottery. A tax exemption program would not require those same processes.
Just a quick pause here.
Yes.
I think we should have a future agenda item about a letter to the state. I don't know why they shouldn't. I think they should qualify for the shy list, and I think that, the recent troubles we've had with the shy list, I think this is another example of why did the state make this more difficult? And I think we should consider that. Sorry.
No problem. So, the main goals of implementing this type of tax exemption in Falmouth would be, obviously, to increase the number of year-round rentals available in Falmouth. And we were thinking that might come in a variety of formats. That could be maybe a unit that was not being previously rented. Maybe it's a house that is held in a family. It's sitting empty for a variety of reasons. Someone learns about this exemption, and that gives them that spark to go ahead and open that unit up and put it on the market for someone to live in. And we really want to emphasize that wouldn't require new development, which is currently something that members of Falmouth are concerned with, the pace of development and construction in town. Another possible target audience could be someone who's been renting short-term and thinking about renting long-term instead. I spoke with many realtors over the last year and a half as I've gotten involved in this housing efforts, and multiple realtors independently identified as a tax exemption as a means to help encourage their property owners to rent to a different type of person, specifically someone who's living in town all year rather than someone who's here on maybe a weekly basis for summer. We want to also help increase the affordability of existing year-round rentals. Again, someone who spoke earlier tonight spoke to that lack of affordability, and so a tax exemption may make it so that a property owner is able to reduce that rent month to month a little bit, and a savings of a couple $100s a month to a tenant can be the groceries that they need to help feed their family. And finally, we generally want to increase housing opportunities for Falmouth residents and employees. Again, I want to just reemphasize, and I'll continue to reemphasize, that this is a strategy that does not require new construction. So we went through and looked at some data to see what would be an anticipated cost per unit. That's an important metric to have when we're discussing affordable housing. And so we looked through registered long-term rentals, a data set of 170 properties, found an average assessed value of those properties to be $775,000, and if you use the current property tax rate, we're talking of a tax burden of about $4,500 on average per unit. And so I'll get into the parameters, but the state legislation would allow us to authorize up to a 100% exemption. And so in that situation, you can imagine that that is creating a unit of affordable rental housing for a year-round individual for a cost of less than $5,000 per unit. And there have been some, there's a lot larger numbers that are thrown around in the affordable housing world, and so I really want to keep kind of coming back to that. And I also, and as our group has been working, we've been remembering that each one of those units is an actual person. Maybe it's an individual, maybe it's a couple, maybe it's a family, and so we really want to keep that in mind, that we could be making a really big difference in someone's life for a relatively small amount of money from the town. We also wanted to consider, does this workflow currently exist? We've spent a lot of time considering how this program might impact town staff. I don't work at Town Hall, and so I wanted to think carefully about how individuals might be impacted. And so we identified that there are currently 3 other exemptions that already exist in Falmouth. They're pretty standard across the state of Massachusetts. And so what that tells us is that the workflow for receiving and processing an exemption exists. While this is admittedly a slightly more complicated exemption because it involves a little bit more paperwork and someone has to show a lease and submit tax returns and things like that, we can identify that this process is known to the assessor's office, and they have shown their ability to process other exemptions. And I just want to point out that this tax exemption is completely separate from the residential tax exemption that has been mentioned earlier in this meeting and in previous select board meetings. Part of our consideration is also, what are our neighboring towns doing? So the first town is not a neighbor. Egremont is a small town in the Berkshires, but they were the first ones that we know of in the state to adopt this legislation. They're a community of about 1,200 individuals, and they offer a 100% exemption. Looking more locally, Orleans just passed this warrant article in their November town meeting, so just about a month ago, and they authorized their select board to adopt this legislation and begin setting some parameters. I'll get to the parameters on a later slide. And so they are moving forward with this legislation. Harwich authorized this back in May and had it up and running by July 1st. Admittedly, Harwich is a smaller town than Falmouth, but it does show that they were able to really expedite that process. And they are estimating fewer than 30 requests in their initial year. And I actually was reading a newspaper article this morning in preparation for this meeting that their assessor has been receiving calls from some other communities, including, for example, Carver, about how they're going to be implementing this. So the assessor departments are talking to each other as they're beginning to implement this exemption. Provincetown has had a local law since 2007 to this effect, and they've found it to be quite successful. After nearly 20 years, they have about 60 individuals who apply for the exemption. So again, that is not a huge number of properties. Also, Provincetown is smaller than Falmouth. But those are 60 families or 60 individuals who are really benefiting in a really tangible and important way. And Truro also has a local law to this effect that they established in 2019. So this is just some text from the law itself, which you do have in your packet, that informational guideline from the state, and really just to emphasize that the first step of accepting this law and beginning this process is a town meeting authorizing the select board to do so. And so that's what we're looking to do here in Falmouth. It doesn't begin the exemption. It allows the select board to start working with town staff to set those parameters and identify that workflow and what are the nuts and bolts of how this is going to work and when does someone do something and who receives that paperwork. Members of the Affordable Housing Committee have been working on this for about the last 6 months, and so we feel prepared that we can offer some guidance when we get to that point. So the law itself is pretty simple. If you had a chance to look over it, it's about 3 pages of text, so it's not a long one. And it identifies, most importantly, parameters that are to be set by the municipality. And it allows a fair amount of flexibility. I just want to mention again that it doesn't require any deed restricting or running any sort of lottery that is sometimes associated with affordable housing because it's a voluntary tax exemption program. So the municipality is allowed to set the maximum amount of the exemption. It goes up to 100%. The annual occupant household limit, and that can go up to 200% area median income. Different communities on the Cape have set some slightly different limits, and we could consider what would be the best fit for Falmouth because we are different from Provincetown, we are different from Orleans. We would set an affordable rate of rent. Most municipalities that are already enacting this have essentially a chart that the assessor can use to determine if the rent that they are that's submitted as part of the application meets the guidelines of this. Because if the goal is to keep rent affordable, if we don't set any rent maximums, then we may not have our intended effect. And if we wanted to set domiciliary requirements of the owner and other restrictions that the community feels are appropriate as long as they're consistent with state law. So for example, we might want to consider asking for some sort of local connection to Falmouth if our goal is to help support individuals who are maybe working or have children attending Falmouth public schools. And again, the Affordable Housing Committee has done a fair amount of contacting these other communities, having phone conversations and email conversations, and so we would feel prepared to provide guidance to the Select Board at this point. So we are hoping to have pretty simple timeline to implementation. Our goal is to get an article on the April 2026 town meeting warrant that would authorize our select board to adopt this legislation, and we would be prepared to provide text of that warrant article to the select board when it's appropriate. And then hopefully town meeting will understand that this is a really valuable opportunity for our community and vote to support that warrant article, and then we can begin the process of identifying where do we want to fall within those parameters, and how are these the nuts and bolts tasks going to be assigned. And this would require obviously careful consultation with the assessor's office. Okay. So the warrant article this is text from the Orleans town meeting, which was just last November. This was essentially the entire warrant article. It was quite simple. It just gives that the select board is now authorized to move ahead with the idea. And our text would likely be very similar. One challenging point in which we would seek your advice and town staff's advice is what is a realistic date for implementation, a tax year, that's our goal, for when can this program be up and running. So we identified 4 really big benefits. It's, in theory, relatively quick once we have those parameters established. If an individual has identified a rental unit that they want to live in, that's being provided at a rate of rent that they can afford, they submit an application and they don't have to wait for something to be built. So in that way, we see this as a big advantage over using only new construction as a strategy to tackle the affordable housing crisis. It's cheap, it's quite low cost. So if we consider that right now a new construction of rental housing is looking at $150,000, and we're averaging the assessed value that could be applied as a maximum of, let's say, $5,000, we're at a 30-to-1 ratio. And that makes a lot of sense for our community. It doesn't face issues associated with new development. We have really limited land resources on Cape Cod, and we're starting to see some tension there between community members and some of the projects that are currently being proposed. And again, that structure for implementing exemptions does already exist. So we think this could be a really large benefit for our town.
Okay, well, thank you very much for all the work you've done. One question for Mr. Johnson-Staub. What would be the date we would need to be looking to get this on the warrant for spring?
You're putting me on the spot. It's a date in late January.
January, right? Okay, before the end of. I will say that, certainly we need to discuss this in the context of whatever comes out of the short-term rental committee, and hopefully we're going to be having that information soon as to where they're going, because it will have an impact as well on rental. But I want to say that of all of the alternatives and ideas that I have seen about increasing the year-round rental stock, this seems to be a no-brainer. It seems to be something that we should definitely think very seriously about implementing. It's short money, and as you say, utilizes existing stock, so we're not building more affordable housing. We're using existing housing, so I, for one, feel it's really something that we should support.
Yeah.
Start with Mr. Richards.
You said a lot of my points. I think it's crucial that we get this on the April warrant, and I think I'm very glad you mentioned Harwich 3-month turnaround, and they had this up and running. This also says that we should still look to build affordable housing, but you're right, where this addresses an immediate need more quicker than, the other tax exemptions we looked at, and also, it takes a while to build housing. And the other part of this that I particularly like is this could be really beneficial to some of our seniors who want to downsize, and folks who are looking to, build ADUs on their properties as well. Like Mr. Chairman said, I think this is a no-brainer, and whatever we can do, I think, to get this ready for the April warrant should be a priority. And I thank you and the subcommittee and the Affordable Housing Committee. You and I met 2 months ago at Coffee Hour to discuss this, and I was really, really pleased with all the work you guys did on it. So I thank you very much for this really important legislation.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. Mr. Brown, yes, no?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I like the fact that it doesn't have to have a deed restriction. It's voluntary, because that's a real concern for a lot of property owners, that when they want to rent, affordability, that deed restriction is a roadblock for a lot of people, so this is more practical. I would say that 5,000 is a lot less than 150, except the 5,000 comes back every year. So it's going to add up a little bit.
It's a 30-year break-even point.
Yeah, but it's still a good idea.
Yeah, that's actually a discussion point. In the examples that you listed on page 8, was there any discussion of the shifting in the tax burden and where that went and or how it was afforded? And did you discuss that as a group?
Yeah, so Orleans and Harwich and Egremont are seeing so few applicants that they're not significantly shifting their tax burden. That's a point at which, if you want to talk, how do you teach 8th graders about photosynthesis? That's my expertise. Tax law is not, right? And so that's where we really kept running up Mr. Reed, sorry, into we're not the experts in this, and so we need to get the assessor's office into the room with us. We're thinking for early days, this is probably not going to draw a ton of applicants. As I mentioned, over a 20-year history, Provincetown has 60 applicants that they're processing. And they do take that from their overlay. Is that correct? So one of my colleagues, David Sakawi, has spent quite a bit of time on the phone with assessors and other town officials. And so in Provincetown, they are adjusting the overlay to account for the exemption.
And to reach 30%, we're looking at finding about 30 more to sign up over the course of time? Is that the number of units, or more?
Or more. I think in the first year, I'm not sure. We had originally thought about potentially, like, you could, for example, cap. One thing that Harwich is doing is that instead of providing a % of the exemption, they actually provide a flat rate based on the square footage that the unit is. And so, because you can also do a part of a unit, let's say, right, it's a half of a unit is being rented in this way. And so Harwich did, I think, a flat rate to try and make those numbers more predictable for what they were going to be running up into.
Okay. Yes. Sure.
I have a question about how we should think about what we're creating or safeguarding here, right? Is this enough of an incentive that it is actually persuading people to change their current rental behavior from either short-term or a higher rate to a lower rate? Or is what we're doing here more likely, and I guess I'm asking based on your conversations with other towns, is what we're more likely doing here safeguarding current affordable housing from rent escalation? Both are really valuable. I just want to understand kind of what we're doing.
Yeah, I think it does have the potential to do both. I think for the incentive to create, let's say someone's been renting short-term and transitioning them to long-term, I think there will be certain short-term rental properties for what, for whom that is, or for that property owner, that this makes a difference. Probably not the rentals that are right along the beach. We have also seen that in the last 2 summers, the short-term rental rate is slightly down, and in conversations with realtors, part of what their property owners who bought maybe when it was peak just after COVID, and that market was really, really strong, now those property owners are having a hard time filling the unit consistently enough to cover their expenses. And so, but I do think it also has the possibility to allow a property owner to continue renting. We hear about folks who the property owner ends up selling the unit, or they say, we're not going to be able to renew the lease because we simply can't afford to continue renting. And when you look at utility rates, those rates are on the rise in Massachusetts, and there's other expenses that are rising, and so this has the possibility to do that as well.
Yeah, and I think that's an increasing need, as we heard during public comment earlier tonight, and it's a story I'm familiar with myself from multiple people. We have a lot of people who are facing rapidly escalating rent, who have been here for quite some time and have been able to afford it, and are facing the loss of their housing. So making sure we can safeguard what we already have is also really important.
And Ms. Goldston, I'd just like to also mention that, we're viewing this as part of our strategy, right? And so we don't think this is going to solve it. But we think that this is a relatively low-cost, low-impact way to, if we can help 30 families in our town.
Help 10.
What was it? Like you said,
10 families.
$5K per unit to preserve and or create, I think is really important.
That's the point I was going to make, is I think some of the questions kind of frame this as a larger solution than what it's intended to be. I think this is intended to be the solution that we can do in the most near term. And also, the way this law is written, it allows us to set limits pretty much who we want that to be, what we want that to look like, the income levels. It gives us a lot of leniency in what we can do should town meeting grant it to us, which is, I think, one thing to keep in mind when we consider this.
We will owe Senator Sear a
Senator,
debt of gratitude for pushing this.
Yeah, Senator Julian Sear did a fantastic job on this legislation.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
If I could, I wanted to go back to Mr. Reed's question about the tax shifting and how that works. So it's a pretty straightforward answer. There is no tax shift. It's a revenue loss. So, it needs to be looked at as an expenditure. And I don't say that to, pour cold water. I think the idea has a lot of merit. And I think Mr. Brown made a really important point that it's $5,000 per year. So if a rental unit lasts for 30 years and we pay $150,000 for that rental unit, probably similar cost, but there's a lot to like about this program because it's not new construction. And
We're
it's helping to maintain
We're bringing on
some.
rental units, right away for $5,000 as opposed to $150,000 and
In upfront cash.
and a period of time.
And it's more landlord-friendly than previous options.
But I will open it up to some comment from the audience if we're done. Ms. Moynihan?
Thank you, Laura Moynihan from the Falmouth Housing Trust. I'm just here to urge you to support this initiative and to thank the Affordable Housing Committee for all their good work that they do. I go to all the meetings. It's an incredible committee. They're really working through the housing production plan and getting us all to implement it, which is really incredible. But the testimony that you heard earlier from the woman who was speaking about her teacher friend at the Falmouth Housing Trust, we probably hear that same story at least twice a week with people calling. And the need is so great, particularly for rentals, and there's a lot of people suffering in this community, and they will continue to do so. This is another tool in the toolbox. We can come up with all sorts of reasons. It's revenue, it's this, it's that. We need to do this. We need to get these exemptions in place to move forward, to help as many people as we possibly can. We are, as a community, using the short-term rental tax to fund our local affordable housing fund, but we're not putting any more money into that fund as a community. And this has come up at town meeting. What else are we doing? What other money are we putting into our local fund? We're bringing money from the CPC. We're not doing anything else. So if we have to put up, $150,000 a year to get 30 units, that's nothing. We're putting $150,000 a year for one unit of new housing that's taking 2.5 to 3 years to build. So to me, it's a really good program. We really can't keep kicking the can down the road on these things. We have to move forward, get this on the April town meeting, and get some of these things put in place. Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience? Well, we're not going to take any action tonight, but I think the consensus of the board is that we want to move forward with this and get it as soon as we can in the new year so we can have some time to reflect and get it on the warrant.
So heard loud and clear. So Peter and I were talking, January 26th is that first read, if you will, of articles, and February 9th is the closing, final read. So we've got some time. So message heard. We will work on getting that ready.
And again, thanks to the committee, the entire Affordable Housing Committee, Ms. Garrison, everyone on that committee, and you especially on the subcommittee. Thank you very much.
My only question as a matter of process is, I guess with the way this happens, where it's not like a traditional article, where we then would do the regulation stuff after, does one of us, me, need to work with the committee before this January deadline, or is it kind of just us making sure that we get that on the warrant?
I think the second at this point.
Yeah, okay. That's what I figured, because
I mean, there's always interaction, and, Mr. Garrison is always in contact with...
He's got my cell.
People housing and so forth, so. Yes.
In the interest of moving this forward, when we're on a tight timelines, why wouldn't we just vote support for this now?
Well, I think we've given the indication. I don't think we need to do it.
I think we need the actual article.
Yeah, we need the actual wording and so forth, but I think the
okay.
For the newspaper headline, though.
Okay. Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
So there are sort of two ways that the board could pursue this at town meeting, and they're in-betweens, but I'll use two to sort of illustrate the differences. You could simply seek a town meeting vote to authorize the select board to implement the program, and then after town meeting, the select board decides what you want to use for eligibility criteria and all those local factors that are under your control. And I think that's a perfectly valid approach. The other approach would be for the board to make some decisions about here's how we plan to implement it, and town meeting could even vote those specifics. Or, the in-between of, here's what we're leaning, but we'd rather have broad authority to modify the program. So in terms of the next steps, it could be really simple. If you just want to say, we just want town meeting approval and we'll work out the details later, the work is basically done. But if there's more work to be done only if you really want to have more detail as part of that town meeting vote.
I think we can make that determination at our first meeting in January and then go from there.
Mr. Chair, if I may, just to close, I think with how quick Harwich turned it around, I think doing the former makes sense. Right? If this is
At this point, I'm leaning towards the easier solution for the time being.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, our next matter is to consider a vote to approve preliminary design of the East Falmouth Library for submission to the Massachusetts Public Library Construction Program for the purpose of securing a grant for construction. And we have you for 15 minutes, Mr. Stokes, and we expect there will be some questions and comments, so.
I will be brief.
It's all yours.
Brian Stokes, Library Director, Falmouth Public Library. Revisiting from our December 1st appearance before you, presenting the design, proposed design for the East Falmouth Library in advance of submitting this to the state to satisfy the planning and design grant that we received and keep us in the running for a construction grant down the road. I will be happy to answer any questions that you have, but I wanted to give Chris Simler, who's the chair of the East Falmouth Library Building Advisory Committee, a chance to make some remarks, and also Noel Murphy from Odinzello Architecture and Jennifer McGrory from CHA, who is providing OPM services on this project as well to answer some questions.
Mr. Renshaw, did you want to say anything in introduction, or Mr. Johnson stuff?
Sure. Yeah, just very briefly, because I know that this powerful team is going to cover the issue well. The issue before the board tonight, as I believe you know from the agenda summary, is whether or not to take the final step to complete the grant process. So the town received a grant for design that gets us to the 20% design level. And then in order to maintain eligibility, the town has received entrance into the grant program, which means that eventually, and it could be a year or 2 years from now, but eventually the town will receive grant funds, 40+% for the construction of a new East Falmouth Library. In order to retain eligibility for that, we need to submit that design by the end of this calendar month. We're at 20% design. The design can change in terms of the aesthetics, the roof, the finishes, the exterior, et cetera. But the building program, is the ability to change that is somewhat limited. So that's the decision before the board tonight.
And if we don't?
If we don't, then the town will not get a grant for construction, 40+%, at least for 5 years.
Okay. Mr. Simler.
Thank you, Chris Simler. And Peter, you said what a lot of was I was going to say. The reason I'm speaking tonight is just a result of the recent emails and information we received from the public on the process. And I just wanted to just make folks aware that we started this in April. And every 2 weeks we've met. We had a public comment section. Every meeting, we only had one time somebody made a public comment. We went to biweekly meetings. We had 2 community outreach sessions, which was incredible. The community came out, they gave us their opinion. We had modern, we had Cape Codish, and then we all came upon this Cape Codish type of look. And the thing that I wanted to say is, as you have these meetings, you progress one step at a time and get more and more along. You can't, I relate it right now is that we're in the bottom of the 9th. And a lot of the comments that were received recently were great, but they are something we needed in the second inning. It doesn't mean, like Peter said, that we cannot modify the look. It's the program that is, I believe, is fixed, and we have to go with that. One of the first meetings would have been resolved, the mill pond. That wasn't in our purview to address, and we all, as a committee, made it clear to people, because some people are saying we're not voting for it unless you fix the pond. We would love to fix the pond, but it wasn't our purview. But what we are doing is we're being good stewards of the land. We're setting the example with the right septic system, refurbishing the coastal bank in the proper way. So that's all we have the power to do right now. I'm more pessimistic. If we don't pass tonight, get the vote to advance, we've wasted $100,000. Likely, I mean, right now, if the project was a go, we wouldn't see anything until 2030, 2031 of completing the project, because just the way the process, it's not like you get the grant and next year we're in construction. So if we didn't, we'd have to wait for this whole system to open up again, which could be in the next 3 to 4 years, go through the whole process. I would think the 2 Cape Cod bridges will be built before we address, East Falmouth Library. That's how long it would take, unfortunately. But what happens in the interim, we're stuck with a building that has fossil fuels, needs maintenance, and is inaccessible for ADA. So we would have to live with that, I would think, personal opinion, another 8 to 10 years easily. So I just wanted to set what I'm thinking before the professionals that we hired, who've done a great job, present their facts. I just wanted to give some perspective on how we saw this whole process.
Thank you. Ms. Brown?
I just want to share that, I went to the very first meeting at the library, and my comment, the first comment was, let's respect the architecture of what's there. And honestly, I feel like that was the majority of the room expressing the love and the respect for the Vidal house and the family and all the work that they've done in the neighborhood. And I just don't see that reflected, so I just want to say that was the first inning. And so I don't know where those comments went. And I saw in the packet some of the presentation materials where you were at the meeting and you're showing the picture board with a lot of, I would say, modern elements to be considered. And one of the comments right on the top was, how about some more Cape Cod architecture? That's one of the only things written on the board. So to say that those comments weren't made, I don't understand that.
Well, no, they were made, and that's what we've, through the process, we feel we brought forth this modern, also Cape Cod respect, which the architects can explain much better, but it's not there, obviously. But the main point is that we can still change the roof. We can still put some features on it to give it that more. We did the shingles, we were looking at more plantings. So it's not like what you're seeing is not the vote we're asking for, it's more the program, and then how we surround the building. We can make it look more Cape Cod-ish if people don't feel it's Cape Cod-ish enough now.
And I'm a troublemaker. I got up yesterday morning and I was finishing up reading the packet, and I was just like, I couldn't believe personally that I hadn't been taking more interest and paid more attention. Wasn't really aware of these meetings, and I usually pay more attention. And so when we saw this 2 weeks ago, it was my first time looking at it. All I had remembered was at the first meeting and made some comments, and so that's my fault. But I put a couple of the photos on, the photo of the existing building onto, if you grew up in Falmouth, you remember, and I said, if you grew up in Falmouth, you probably remember the Vidal family living up on the hill while we're skating on the pond, and 145 people commented in just several hours. Geez, I can't understand where that design came from. So I'm just saying it's not fair to give you this at the last minute, but at the same time, it's also not really fair to the village if they haven't seen the plan. So it's a tough one.
So let Mr. Richardson, and then let's hear from the professionals.
Well, mine's more process oriented, so I can go after them. If that's okay.
Please.
Okay. I'm Noel Murphy with Odinzello Architecture. My colleague Conrad Ello, who was with you a couple of weeks ago, wasn't able to join tonight, but I've heard the feedback that was shared a couple of weeks ago, so I just wanted to speak to some of those points, kind of reiterate the points from Chris and Brian. But to kind of put where we are in context, we are still early days in the development of the design. A lot of our focus has been on the inner workings of the building, less so on the, kind of the exterior expression. And it's not uncommon to be having a debate at this stage in the overall process as to what the building looks like. And so we would expect that we'll continue to have that conversation in the year of design ahead of us, to solicit more community feedback, to take the comments we're hearing now and that kind of have come through over the last 48 hours into consideration in terms of how that can be integrated into the design. So this is not a finished product, and we will shape and mold this, this building with the community. And as architects, we aren't here to kind of assert a specific style. We've done more traditional buildings, including traditional libraries, so that's something we're very comfortable doing. So that's, I think, we're at a natural point in the process where that's coming to a head, and it's something that we'd like to, play out together as we move into the next phase. So that's kind of the aesthetics of the building. I know there were some comments about a one-story versus a two-story building that were also shared a couple of weeks ago. Early on, we did kind of debate and consider a two-story option for the library. And one of the fundamental decisions we made with the building committee and with the MBLC, the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners, is that a one-story building is just significantly easier to operate with the staff that we have at this branch library. One of the things the state is very focused on is surveillance. How can you have oversight of a building? And a one-story library makes that much more achievable with a small staff. So that was kind of the fundamental decision that led us on the course of a single-story building. There's also some other kind of practical considerations in terms of accessibility, introduction of an elevator and a stair, and egress and daylight that would factor into having a portion of the building. I think the meeting room was suggested kind of sunken into a lower level. All that being said, I mean, there is, just like the exterior of the building, there is, an opportunity to revisit some of those decisions. I think what we've heard from the state is that they're really supportive of the single-story building for the operational reasons that I mentioned. But there is a year of design ahead if we choose to move forward, which I hope we do, to continue to have that kind of discussion together. And there was also some comments about the windows, which are quite large, and kind of bird safety and kind of light trespass that would result, potentially result from those large windows. Bird safety is something that, and bird strikes is something that is discussed on every project at this day and age. And the industry is kind of caught up with that kind of discussion. And now there are bird-safe glass products that have an exterior treatment on them. It's kind of a ceramic kind of frit or etch pattern, dot pattern on the glass to minimize the risk of bird strikes. And that's products that get certified, and there's a whole testing process that goes into them, and we would propose using a product of that kind on this building. And then in terms of light control, I think the building up on the hill is certainly something that you don't want to have kind of light beaming out from in the evening hours. So we would have motorized shades for daylight control, but also to control light trespass after hours. And then I think the final comment that I'm aware of was much like the exterior and trying to make sure that it fits the community and their needs is the interior. I know that the existing building, which is a home originally, has a beautiful kind of living room quality to it when you enter it. I think the renderings that we've shared so far, which are still pretty early on, don't necessarily capture that spirit, and that's something we've heard from many people, something that we'd want to kind of bring kind of that warmth, that hominess and intimacy into the new library, and I think there's plenty of opportunity to do that. That's something we're really excited about being able to do. So that's kind of I just wanted to speak to some of the comments that came up a couple of weeks ago. I'm happy to answer questions. I don't know, Jennifer, if you have anything to add.
I have another one.
So there's two things here. One, just to quote, Peter, you had a really good email about this earlier, was this is the 20% stage of the construction designs, and that the aesthetic appearance is not finalized. We can discuss this. There's over a year or more of discussing this. And if we don't, as Mr. Silmer said, if we don't vote for this, we're not getting a library. Like, that's the reality. The second piece is this is back to the police station, part of this is what can we do, and part of this is why is the community just waiting until the very last minute? Is there something more that we need to do communication-wise? Because there was a lot of robust public outreach on this project. There was multiple enterprise articles, multiple outreach, multiple public sessions, bi-weekly meetings, and then why are we getting a bunch of emails after 4 o'clock today telling us not to vote for it? Something is wrong in this process. not only with this one, but also with the police station. It was the exact same thing. Because you had mentioned when we talked about it, no one showed up to those first couple of meetings. This committee, after doing a year of work, picks a site, and now all of a sudden the community decides to show up. You know, I'm making a plea to the public. There needs to be more buy-in. People need to get involved earlier in the process, or we're going to keep lighting fires right at the end, and that helps no one. I don't know if there's anything more that we need to be doing. I've mentioned, you know, if there's anything we can do on the technological side and investments there, but this whole cycle and this it's you know, it's almost disrespectful to the people who do the work, whether it be the PSAC advisory committee or the talented people on this committee and the people that they appoint, to just at the very last minute get up screaming. And the tone of some of these emails, some of them were fine, but some of them were just borderline rude. And we need to do better as a community, and if there's any way that we can make that easier for people to get involved, I think we really need to consider that as soon as possible.
Well, I would just say we sat at our strategic planning meeting and talked about public outreach, and you have to do everything you can to reach out to people. And like I said, one simple post on a local discussion page generated a lot of negative feedback about this project. So maybe we should have done that last year, or maybe we should come up with some new ideas.
If there's any way the town can get more town Facebook, be more rigorous with that or something, because you're right.
Okay, so my question is, now that we're in this last-minute position, I noticed that your firm also did the West Tisbury Library addition and renovation, but yet you maintained the integrity of the design, and I love that design, and I could see that sitting on that hill. How much latitude do we have? I mean, if we're going to submit this modern design and say this is what we've endorsed here today, can we come back later and say we changed our mind, we like the West Tisbury Library, we wish we had chosen that? How far can we go with our flexibility?
Yeah, I mean, you have a lot of latitude as to the exterior look and feel of the building. What we're submitting to the state is primarily a layout of spaces of certain sizes to house the needs of the new library, the book collection of the new library. It's kind of those metrics that are kind of the first and foremost for the state's review. They also want to make sure that we have a functioning site plan with parking and all of those attributes worked out. They are not weighing in on what the building looks like. So I think voting to move forward tonight is not an endorsement of a rendering of the building, and there is a lot of leeway to continue to work on that. And yeah, West Tisbury is a response to a community that wanted a more traditional library, and we worked together to achieve that. So that's certainly a possibility here. There's no reason we couldn't do that.
I'm willing to concede that the two-level design probably doesn't work. Mr. Johnson-Staub explained that to me earlier. You know, I don't like that, but I guess I would be willing to live with that. To me, it's like such a large building for such a small site that it's kind of overpowering. That's why I wanted that lower level meeting room space. I'd be really happy if that could be practical, but if it's not, I would concede that. At the same time, I wish we could take a picture of the West Tisbury Library and just put it in with the packet and say, by the way, here's an alternative we might come back with, just as an aside, because I don't really like the idea of signing on to something that I really don't endorse. I mean, I'm probably going to get outvoted anyway, but I wish I could feel a lot better about it if we could do that.
So the fact that we can make modifications, we're asking you more to vote on the program and the space and the community room, how that is shelled. You know, this was the older days. We would have them with their nice charcoal pencils, and they would be giving us some rendering. So the incredible computer stuff you see right now is actually doing a disservice. It looks so perfect, but it's not even close to that. And it's this tension that we've in the industry that at this small level you can make something look so perfect. So we would be seeing just you know, like paintings and just outlines of what the building to be determined. So, you know, I don't know how, we're not asking you to vote on the look because that's not the key here, it's the program, but you can put a caveat that we explore, and we're all for it. I mean, believe me, we hear what you're saying, we hear what now the community's saying, so I believe, and I'm committed to doing that.
Dr. Goldstone?
I'll just say, I feel like there is always more that we and everyone could do in regards to community engagement. People are busy, people miss things, people don't make it to the one meeting, they don't understand the significance of that one meeting. Like that happens in every process. I feel like this team has been very responsive, not only to the input that I provided 2 weeks ago, but I've heard from others who have been to the meetings that they felt that their comments were heard and that they were listened to. And so I really appreciate that. And I did not grow up here in Falmouth. My kids did grow up, as I shared last time, a short walk from that library. And I do feel a sentimental attachment to that building, and I feel like myself deeply how hard this change can be. And I think it's incredibly important that we find really meaningful ways to honor that history, to honor the contributions of the Vidal family. I am not usually the first to name something, but I would be the first to go out and start a process to say, let's name it the Vidal Library in East Falmouth, right? Let's really recognize the history and the family who was here, and at the same time, let's allow our community to evolve and give East Falmouth an amazing, beautiful, modern library with all that it can have, and really celebrate also. The pond needs some work, but let's celebrate the environment and the place that's there with those gorgeous windows and the ability to see it in the sunlight. Like, I think there's a lot to love, and there is room to modify it, and we have a responsive team. So I think we have all the pieces in place to have a really successful project, and it would be a real shame, it would be worse than a real shame, to throw away the funding and the opportunity that it might be 5 years, but it might not come back, right? When you get off these waiting lists with the state and out of these processes, that opportunity doesn't always come back again. And I think the really hard reality is that the home that is there, as beloved as it is, and the team can speak to this better than I can, but it can't continue to serve as a library and in that capacity, certainly not indefinitely. And so we have to do something else there.
So is it a matter, Doug, of the wording of the item in the agenda that you seem to be most concerned about, is that we're voting to approve a preliminary design?
Well, that's why
If there is a way that we can modify that motion to reflect what we've been told we're actually voting on, and still, give what the state requires to move this forward, then I think that may be the way to go forward tonight, so that we can move on the project, and you're not feeling, and the board's not feeling that they're necessarily being tied to any particular design, quote unquote, at this point, more the building parameters, the programs, as Noah has said.
That's exactly right. I would be fine with saying that we endorse the programmatic layout, but the design maybe needs to change.
We don't have to say the but. I mean,
and I'd rather say, let's call it a state-of-the-art building rather than a modern building.
Does that give you enough to work? I mean, we don't want to, we don't want to cause any problems with what the state would require.
So I think we can make this work. I'm wondering if the way to approach this is two separate votes. So, we want to send a clear message to the Massachusetts Library Board of Commissioners that we're submitting this library program, we're submitting this preliminary design, and we're going to stay in the grant program. That's one vote, and that's done. And then maybe there's a separate vote to say, we want the East Falmouth Library Building Advisory Committee to work on a more traditional design to honor the, the community input and the aesthetic that we've heard so much about from the public in the last, 48 hours. Yeah.
I would say consider, as opposed to, consider a more traditional design as opposed to locking them into a specific design.
So
but
if I may try for the first motion.
Well, let's just see if there's anyone who wants to speak with respect to it, knowing where we're headed. We've certainly heard the emails, we read the emails and heard some of the comments. So if there is no one that wants to speak, then we can move forward.
So
you have something to say? Oh, sure.
So my name's Jean Harper. I live in East Falmouth, about a minute away from the library. I also happen to work at the library, but my bosses probably don't want me to tell you that. I would be very disappointed if we didn't have 100% approval.
Can't quite hear you.
I would be really disappointed if we didn't have 100% approval, because what we would be saying is we don't want a library in East Falmouth. I don't believe that there's going to be a second round of grants and we could get a library in 8 to 10 years. I think if this doesn't go through, I don't know how long it would take, but I also don't think the building is going to last that long. That building was not designed to be a library, and it has some issues.
And we all agree on that.
Yeah. So if we want this, there should be 100% support for this project, because it's having a library in East Falmouth, and I think it's really too bad. I haven't looked at the Facebook thing, but that's the only reason why I'm here. Because I feel like, we need to get some education to figure out why people get so fired up about change. And I think that people say things without understanding the facts. And I think we should go 100% behind this project. It'd be crazy not to get this grant. Free money. It's like millions of dollars.
See, I think a lot of people see the town changing and evolving, and even other towns on the Cape, even worse.
Yeah.
And I think people are just getting freaked out. So this is one more thing.
I understand. I think, I've had a little more time to get used to the idea, and I look at it, I'm like, ooh, that feels a little big, blah, blah, blah. I have my own trepidation. I am more concerned about it feeling like I'm the living room, not a bookstore person. Every time I go to all the meetings and walk up to the architects and say, it needs to look like a living room when you walk in. It needs to be really comfy and cozy and warm. I'm wondering if maybe the new, like the shingles, I think they were going Cape Cod. I wasn't involved with the committee. I was not allowed to be. Shingles, and to me, a one-story is a lot less, like it's not going to be a mountain. It is big, but I think that one-story shingles could be Cape Cod, new Cape Cod. I mean, I live in I live in a Cape, and I'm kind of sick of the Cape Cod house on the inside. I'll tell you, I'd like to live in a taller ceilinged house, but I think people will love this building when it's done. I think it will grow on people, and I think people will love it. And I love that we have some time to change it to make it work for what we want. But please don't hold the vote for an idea of a...
So now...
But acting on Peter's suggestion, and if we're going in that two motion, I'm wondering if the first motion may be what you proposed as a second motion, which would be a motion, and if you want to frame it, Mr. Richardson, to ask the Building Advisory Committee to, work together, with the community to consider a more traditional, get that on the record, and then move to the second vote, which is to approve what we need to approve for the grant.
Is that fine with the committee? Yeah, okay, so...
Excuse me. Please, but you have to come up.
Yeah. My name's Camille Romano. I'm the alternate on the Building Advisory Committee, and the one thing that I understand wanting to parse into two votes, I don't agree with putting the word traditional into any decision, because I didn't see the Facebook post. Which Facebook group was it on?
If you grew up in Falmouth, you remember when?
Okay, so I did not grow up. I've only been here for 30-odd years.
That's why I was looking for feedback, people who grew up and...
Sure, but the people who grew up in Falmouth do not have any more weight than the people who live in Falmouth now and did not grow up here. So I've had nothing but positive feedback with everybody that I've shown the plans to, that I've pointed out that it's on the website, that I've talked to about the project. Granted, they're not necessarily, native people from Falmouth. I don't think that they're
the Facebook page should drive a discussion that the board puts the word traditional in a motion and approves that, because that doesn't reflect what the town wants. And I don't want it to come back in 2 years or whenever we have funding and somebody says, well, the board said we have to look at a traditional. So I think that the committee needs to continue to work with the community and whatever on incorporating more community thought into the design or something without specifying what that new design may or may not look like. It could be that it becomes more modern. That could be the driver from the town, from the community that we talk to. I just don't want to have a word in there that points the advisory committee in any direction and says this is a mandate because it came out of a Facebook post on Friday, on the day of the meeting or whatever. That's all.
What about respecting the architecture of the building that's there? That's common architectural practice.
I think we've wandered into the territory of the Library Building Advisory Committee rather than the select.
All right, so going with the first and second, motion to instruct the East Falmouth Library Advisory Committee to consider consider alternate designs, comma, and even though I appreciate it, improve efforts to get community feedback.
This motion?
In collaboration with the select board.
In collaboration with the select board.
Because we need to help too.
Anyone prepared to?
I would second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Can I just clarify that we're separating the two, because we need to give 100% unanimity on the permission to proceed with the 40%.
Well, I don't think we need 100%.
I'm going to vote for both of these anyways.
I don't think we
want
need
to see us not get a new library. I just want to understand what we're voting.
100%.
Come to agreement on it.
I don't think we need it.
Roger that. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
No.
Second vote. The select board vote to approve the recommended, and I'm just going to add the word preliminary design. Does that help for that motion? Or?
I don't know. It has to be.
No, it is a preliminary design.
So just adding the word, well, it's just not in the motion, so I'm just adding it to the motion. Is that fine?
The town manager's comments is probably if you read that, Jack, I think it's got.
Oh, yeah. Is that fine? Add that to the motion then? Because I see it's in your comment, but it's just.
Yes.
We're too bogged down in semantics. The select board's vote to approve the recommended preliminary design. Motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. Got there. All right. Thank you very much. Okay, our next item is to discuss and consider a vote to approve an application to the Falmouth Affordable Housing Fund from 85 Brick Kiln LLC for the project located at 85 Brick Kiln Road, Falmouth. Thank you. And we have Ms. Fish. And
hi, for the record, I'm Kimberly Fish, the housing coordinator in the housing division. What are you doing now? No. And this is Nick Marioni here on behalf of 85 Brick Kiln LLC on his application for funding from the Falmouth Affordable Housing Fund.
thank you. Reading.
So what we have is an approved 40B project, 40 units, that's composed of 22 studio units in, sorry if I'm talking a little, can you hear me? Can you understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
There's 2 studio buildings here, and their addresses are there. So there's 22 total units, there's 14 two-bedroom units, and there's 4 three-bedroom units, which are located in 2 in this building and 2 in this building. We have 10% of 10 units, 25% have to be 80% AMI we've requested funds from the Falmouth Affordable Housing Fund to make an additional 10 units with project-based vouchers at 50% AMI. And the last 5 units will be at 120% AMI. There'll be 15 remaining market rate units. The project is moving right along. We have all the water liners installed. The drainage structures are being delivered this week. The vaults and the underground electric conduits are starting to show up on site. And we have to get the IA Infodrome system approved by the Board of Health so we can start ordering the components for that, and that'll be installed last. Even though we're going to do the collection system now, the actual leaching field and the Infodrome system will be installed last. So we're hoping to have final approval from Mass Housing. We're in the final review stage now. I think within 2 or 3 weeks we should have final approval from them so we can start pulling building permits, at which point we hope to start putting foundations in just so we can connect water lines and sewer lines and keep the site work moving. The site has 74 parking spaces. There are only 69 required, and 7 of the 74 spaces are going to be handicap parking spaces. So I don't know if you have any questions at this point. Would you like to ask questions?
So the reason why you're coming back and asking for more, do you want to explain that, Mr. Marion?
Well, we originally asked for 128,000 a unit.
Now you're asking for 150.
Now
You
we're
want to
asking for
explain why you're doing that?
150,000. Well, because of the increased costs going to the IA system and not going for an appeal to do a conventional Title V system.
And that was a requirement that was asked of you to do?
I wouldn't say it was a requirement that was asked of us to do. It was suggested it would be very helpful to get the additional funds to, if we didn't do the appeal, because the cost of that IA system is over $400,000 increase over a Title V system. So that was making the project uneconomical. So it was a suggestion of the Affordable Housing Fund to assist with that by suggesting I come back and ask for more money to help cover the cost of that.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions?
And you could do the traditional if you didn't offer to do the denitrified. Is that, am I understanding that correctly?
We would have had to file, the zoning board denied our waiver for that request. So we would have had to file an appeal with Mass Housing to have that condition, have that waiver approved and the denial removed.
Sorry.
No,
go on.
What's the percentage of affordability? I think you said it, but I didn't quite catch it. The number of units?
25 affordable out of 40.
Okay, thank you. That's a lot.
That was a considerable lift to get the applicant to agree to that.
Got it.
And a significant number of those are at 50% AMI, as well as 80 and 120. So I think that increase is very compelling.
Yeah, it's a good
Yes,
project.
it is.
Motion? Mr. Reed, did you have a question?
Can I just ask why the planning board rejected the initial?
Zoning board.
Zoning board.
Zoning board. Why the zoning board rejected this?
Because they wanted them to use the IAs. They rejected the conventional Title V.
Okay. Next question, probably more for Mr. Johnson-Staub. Of the two balance sheets that we're looking at with the funding available, we have the additional funds coming from non-CP funds. Am I reading that correctly? That's where the variance comes from? We have two sheets. First sheet is non-CP funds with a starting balance of $3 million.
1.5 million comes from non-CP, Sim. Kim, is that correct? 1.5 million?
So the reason for the split is the funds from the CP funds cannot fund anything higher than 100% AMI, and 5 of those units are going to be deed restricted at 120% AMI, so then we dip into the other side of the funds, which are the non-CP funds.
And that's where this additional 750 comes from?
Yes.
Okay, roger that, thank you.
And to be clear, we're not funding an IA system. The fund can't do that. We're increasing the fund so they can take it from their construction budget, and we're replacing the construction budget.
Roger that.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. I really appreciate how over half of these units are affordable, so I have no further questions, and I move that the Select Board, as trustees of the Falmouth Affordable Housing Fund, award $2,250,000 to be awarded as a loan secured by a mortgage and other documents on 85 Brick Kiln Road for the construction of 40 rental units. Of those 40 to be deed restricted beyond the 25% required by the 40B statute are 5 units restricted to those earning no more than 120% of the area median income, and 10 units restricted to those earning no more than 80% of the area median income, and authorize the town manager to execute the documentation setting forth the terms of the financial award for construction at 85 Brick Kiln Road.
Second.
I have a motion and
Can
a
I just
second.
make one more thing before you finally close on that? The 50% AMI units are project-based vouchers issued by Falmouth Housing Authority. They come with a 5-year contract because they get renewed by the government every 5 years. And if they don't get renewed, those units would stay in the program at 80% AMI.
Gotcha.
Yep, that was in the explanation.
Thank you for the
Yeah, that
clarification.
doesn't change my vote, but I appreciate that.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Moving on to discuss and consider a vote to transmit to the Finance Committee the recommended FY 2027 operating budget. Mr. Renshaw?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to lead off and then turn it over to Laura Citron, our Finance Director. As you all recall, on December 1st, I provided a high-level overview, talked about a lot of the challenges with regards to this FY 27 operating budget, some of the levers, so to speak, that we're pulling to make this happen without an override. There's been some changes. I'm going to have Laura kind of give a very brief overview of one of those changes in particular. But I also wanted to point out the fact, you all know this, the budget binders were passed out last week, so hopefully you've had a chance to go through those. Provides a lot more detail, so if you have any specific questions at that level, this is the time to ask, because my request is that you consider transmitting the budget to the Finance Committee at tonight's meeting. Laura?
Okay, so I am primarily going to focus on the budget overview, which, if you have your book with you, it's behind tab 1, behind the budget manager, the town manager's budget message. It would be page 9, except it doesn't actually have a page number on it. Looks like this, without all my notes on it. In any case, so what I want to talk about are the changes. We had 2 changes that we have made since December 1st. So actually, the budget presentation from December 1st was included in your packet for tonight, but that had not been updated, so but the 2 changes are, one is relatively small and the other one is good news that's more substantial. So the first change is we received a letter from the Falmouth Retirement Board saying that the percentage between the town of Falmouth and the Falmouth Affordable Housing
Authority.
Falmouth, right, okay, Housing Authority. The percentage had changed a little bit, which increases our pension expense by $35,188. So we had to make that change because it has to be the exact amount that's in the budget for the amount that we're going to pay over to the Falmouth Retirement Board on July 1st.
So that's a debit of $35,900?
Right, so it increased the expenditures by $35,188. And where that is simply down on the second page of that overview. Employee benefits, that number just increases by $35,188. To offset that so that we keep the budget in balance, we increased motor vehicle tax excise under local receipts by the same amount.
So wait, where does that, so that's employee benefits.
So employee benefits.
27 recommended goes up.
Right.
From 34,693.
Okay, so.
Right, to 34.
You don't have to change it in. The numbers that are in the budget, I'm sorry, let me start over. The numbers that are in the budget book are correct.
Are good. It was your
They
presentation.
have the two changes. I'm just telling you about the changes that happened since the presentation last, on December 1st.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
The other change is when we were doing the tax recap, recap certification setup for fiscal year 2026, our new growth number came in substantially higher than we had budgeted. So it came in at $1,631,000 and change. And you'll see that on this page 9 under new growth in the first column, budget 2026. Why that's important is because it changes the subtotal line of 124. That line carries over to 2027 as the base from the prior year. So it actually increased the base by a little bit, and the bottom line is that instead of having to use 1.2 million of excess capacity, we only had to use 655,000, basically cutting that in half.
So we have some flexibility next year.
That's right.
So that's not reflected in the budget book, correct?
It is. It is reflected in the budget book.
So what I'm seeing is still the 900,000 in new growth, not 1.6 million.
You have to look in column fiscal year 26, the very first column.
Right. 1.1 is what it says there. So, okay.
Are you in your budget book?
Yep.
Page 9 at the top.
Page 8, 9 at the top. Is mine different than yours?
1.1 as opposed
New growth is 1.1 in the FY26 budget is 1.1 as listed here.
Maybe we can change your budget out because.
Does everybody else's budget book reflect 1.1 million?
Yes.
So clearly that page needs to be updated more.
So we still need to
We'll
update.
make that
Okay. All right.
Okay.
But that is good news.
Yeah, that's very good news.
In effect, correct me if I'm wrong, Laura, but in effect, that reduces that property tax increase that I talked about at $48, I think was the amount roughly.
Right.
Because we were able to rely on, utilize less of the excess capacity, it cuts that in half, in effect.
That's right.
More than $20, bro.
20-something dollars, yes, in effect. In addition to giving a little bit more flexibility.
Just a question, and I mean, to balance the budget, we had a bigger expense on the retirement, $37,000. And we are going with the excise tax and just budgeting that we're going to get more money to be able to balance it. Is there any real support that we are going to get that increase on that line, or are we just doing it to balance the budget, honestly?
It's still substantially below what we have been receiving.
We're budgeting more than we had, but we're still below what expectations really have been.
That's right. I mean, we always try to stay really conservative with local receipts. We like to budget between around 79 or 80%. In fiscal year 27, we're at 84%. The $37,000 does not impact that percentage at all.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. So, but just to clarify, we do have time to send this up to FinCom as far as what the law requires.
So, correct, the law requires that the recommended budget be transmitted by January 16th each year. We do have one more meeting between now and
do that. We know that the FinCom is taking their first crack at it on January 7th?
7th. The Wednesday, I think, is the 7th.
Okay, January 7th is their first
We're
meeting.
meeting January 5th.
Correct.
All right, just to set the timeline, if anyone has some questions or isn't satisfied to move it forward tonight, we do have some time. That's all I wanted to establish.
You can always ask questions later and make suggestions. I mean, I would always just push it along.
Yes.
My question is always, departments requested $2.68 million in new staff or increased services that in the end were not included in the proposed budget. What is it that we had to cut in order to balance the budget this year, at least in kind of broad brushstrokes?
With regards to that $2.6 million that was primarily staffing, I think the numbers refresh my memory. There were 8 firefighter positions.
There were 8 firefighter positions. There were 2 sergeants and 2 patrol. There were several positions. Actually, there were several positions for facility maintenance. There were a couple that were left unfunded in the senior center. There were some, and there were several parks.
We can send out that list, Madam Vice Chair and the board. We can send out the list. Laura has been, when we met with the departments, we were compiling a list. We thought that was important. We'll distribute that list so you can see it. But it was 12.5, I believe, approximately positions that I did not recommend go forward and be funded.
I mean, I guess one thing that I'm wondering is, with the good news that we just got, if we've figured out all these levers we could pull to make things work before we got that good news, are there things that are high enough on the list that we couldn't make work before that we should actually consider trying to make work now? All right, with that $650,000.
Yeah, that's a great question.
In additional new growth revenue.
That's a great question. And the answer is, yes, we certainly could consider adding some of those things back. I think, speaking for the management team, the downside of that is we're looking at an override, as we've discussed and as the manager has identified in his budget message, we're looking at an override for next fiscal year to maintain existing service levels. So, the good news means maybe we're reducing the amount of that override by $600,000, or maybe we spend some portion of that $600,000, but that does increase the potential override next year.
And I think it has. Thank you. I think it also has an impact on those gaps that we showed in the 5-year projection. I mean, these would be, if we hypothetically, if these positions were to be added, we take that immediate direct cost down, but then ultimately we're adding, over the years, we're adding additional cost for, again, a salary wage adjustment. So it becomes part of that built-in 5-year. And as you all know, the 5-year projection that was presented in my budget presentation 2 weeks ago, those gaps did not reflect any new positions. That was just status quo as we were. And I don't have those gaps in my head, but they were significant revenue versus expenditures.
I, for one, certainly appreciate your transparency and candor in your message with respect to the possibility, to the probability of an override next year, and it has been discussed. I do hope that we have those discussions as early in the process as possible, so that the board can, take a position with respect to the override, the amount of it, and so forth, as soon as possible. I think we all want to see that happen.
I'd like to really get down with the Finance Committee and talk about the operating and the capital budgets and ways to reduce our overall cost. As we've discussed a couple times peripherally, divesting buildings,
I think we're planning to have a joint meeting with FinCom, but there are some limitations as to where they can weigh in on as a...
I'm less concerned about the limitations. I just want to, in consultation with the chair and vice chair, when we set the agendas, we have had some preliminary discussions with the FinCom chair, and Mr. Schwagel has indicated he's on board. He just wants to make sure that we have clear expectations and some objectives going, what is going to be discussed. I'm less concerned about lanes, honestly, than I am having a concrete objective.
Well, I think that's more what I meant, actually, is the lanes as opposed to restrictions.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So we are planning that. We haven't set a date yet, but we are planning that in the spring.
Are we prepared to move it to FinCom?
Yeah, the only thing I'm going to say, I won't bring up the residential exemption again.
Thank you.
Good point, I got you.
And do it without doing it.
Whatever ways that we can increase revenues without increasing the overall tax burden on the year-round residents of Falmouth needs to be the #1 priority of the town.
And also whatever we can do to reduce our expenses, We've got a lot of
both
municipal
parts.
properties, maybe we don't need them all. Maybe there's a lot of things we can do to be more lean and efficient.
This is all new information to us, so this may be too out of the blue for folks to get on board. But an additional contribution to the Affordable Housing Fund is not an ongoing liability and could be a consideration coming from, in particular, revenues from new growth within our town. There are funds that could be used to, in some ways, offset some of the impacts of new development. So something like a $500,000 extra one-time contribution to the Falmouth Affordable Housing Fund from those excess, or not excess, those additional and unexpected new growth revenues is something just an idea to put out there.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
That was just a question I had because I was also going to propose that, but it is listed as a $950,000 as a town meeting article to include. But we're also allowed to just add money without the approval of town meeting.
What's being proposed is increasing the amount of what would be submitted to town meeting.
Oh, I see. Okay, thank you.
And I believe that $950,000 is an authorized minimum by town meeting, correct?
Which we've always...
More or less, right.
Which we've always voted.
Okay. And an emphatic ditto. I got nothing else.
Any more questions? Ready to move it to the vote?
Is there a particular motion? Or I would just say let's send this budget book off to the Finance Committee.
Second.
Vote to transmit to the Finance Committee the recommended FY 2027 operating budget as presented with amendments to the book that we have.
So the updated amendments, but not the additional contribution to affordable housing.
At this
Is the
point,
motion.
right.
And to forward amendments as they become.
Yeah, this isn't the final. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, last but not least, consider a vote to submit a letter to the governor's office in support of the Rail 2 Trail Bicycle Path Project. Mr. Renshaw?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So back on October 27th was the last time we visited this topic. I gave recommendation to maintain the status that the previous select board had voted back in, I guess it was 24, I believe, to maintain rail with trail. The board on October 27th unanimously, I believe, voted to support a letter to the governor's office in support of rail to trail. At your seats, included in the packet is a draft that was prepared at your seats tonight is a revised draft with some additional language that perhaps adds some additional condition language. I think that was perhaps an element that was missing in the original draft. So my ask is that the board consider approving the draft with revisions at your seats tonight.
Mr. Chair?
So just for the record, I support the original draft that's actually in our packet. I feel that it encompasses in In general terms, what we discussed, I think, although it doesn't use the term conditional, I think it's implicitly conditioned that we're asking, well, the letter speaks for itself, but I just, on the record, I support the original draft of the letter that is in your packet, but you do have before you a red line revision that ties up some more conditions, which, in my opinion, will delay the project unnecessarily, and that's my feeling. So,
I would say that the red line version more accurately reflects the minutes of that meeting.
I will tell you, I went through and looked at the minutes a couple of times, and I wasn't quite sure exactly when we were talking about conditional and support and so forth, but you know, I think that, honestly, this project will never go forward if the revised letter is what the position of this board is.
I mean, that's incredibly harsh, I feel. I mean, at the end of the day, we're endorsing the project, and I don't think that the difference in the letters is going to change Governor Healey's position. We are, with either letter, we are submitting our support to the governor, and I feel that either one would be fine. After considering both, I do definitely see your point, Bob, but I do agree, looking back at the minutes, and we did talk a good amount about wanting conditionally to support rail in the future, and I do think the red line version, after considering both, does reflect that well. But again, I'm totally fine with either letter. As long as we send a letter unanimously, I'm okay with whatever my colleagues decide.
Mr. Chair, I don't want to interrupt your deliberations and discussion, but for the purpose of the public who does not have access to this red line, let me, if you all would allow me to quickly read this.
I'm going to suggest that.
So I'll let folks know, listening at home and here tonight, that the change in the first paragraph literally added the word conditional. At the regular meeting of the Falmouth Select Board held on December 15th, 2025, the board authorized to send this letter to indicate its conditional support for what has been commonly. So that addition of conditional is the only change, red line change, in the first paragraph. The revised version that we're discussing tonight eliminates, strikes out, beginning with however, the members of the board reconsidered, strikes that entire section and replaces it with, however, in light of ongoing conversations at the state level, the board reconsidered its position and wishes to express support for the construction of an alternative railway to replace the F2 and enable the Rail 2 trail approach. The result would be a win-win for the Upper Cape, allowing for both continuous 26-mile bike trail to connect Woods Hole and the Cape Cod Canal, as well as 21st century rail infrastructure for cargo and passenger transport. This option would help fulfill the Cape Cod Commission's Vision 88 project, while also offering increased emergency preparedness and opportunities to reduce carbon emissions, traffic congestion, and wear and tear on the Cape's aging bridges. We urge the Healey-Driscoll administration to commit to an F2 replacement strategy as part of the FY27 update to the 5-year capital investment plan, so that railway decommissioning and bike path construction can proceed in parallel in a timely manner. So that was the significant change, that second paragraph.
So my only question is why I feel it comes on stronger and still sends a message if you just remove the word conditional and keep all the changes to the rest of the letter. I don't know how the rest of the board feels.
I don't agree with that. I think it's important that it's conditional on beginning the process of determining at least a feasibility study to know if it's even practical. Because if it's not even practical to dream of an alternate line, then let's face reality now.
Well, my concern with the revised draft is that it seems to say that we're saying don't proceed with the Rail 2 trail unless the F2 is decommissioned. And I don't think that was really what we were saying. I think what we were saying is we want to support the Rail 2 trail. It's gone on for a long time. There's been a lot of delay. But at the same time, we urge the governor and the administration to seriously look at decommissioning the track and putting an alternative in at some point, but to conflate the two, to connect the two, I feel is just going to unnecessarily delay the project. That's how I feel about it.
I feel strongly that if we don't put this language in, you're just going to take out the track and then it's not going to be back.
Yeah, I fundamentally...
That we got from staff, and it's not what I would want to see happen.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of tonnage that's going over the rail bridge. They're rebuilding the rail bridge right now. You see all the materials that have been delivered to the yard. People talk about the bridge, train bridge falling apart. They're fixing it. So, Mr. Reed?
I felt the original, while good, it didn't strongly support the previous position of town management with the needs to support what's listed in here, the rail infrastructure, cargo, and passenger transport. I felt that that was missing from our discussions in the original letter. In the revision, that was my question coming in, not knowing that this was going to be here. I would voice support for this revised just because it supports, I think, our obligation on both. We want recreation, but at the same time, we have major infrastructure needs for mainly Joint Base Cape Cod and the cargo that has to get off Cape one way or another. So it is two things. We did conflate two things, and I think we were purposeful in that because they're two very important things that need to be expressed here, and the second catches it more.
I certainly don't disagree that the two are very important. I just think that the original letter was more definitive that we want to see the project go forward, the rail-to-trail project go forward, but at the same time urge the administration to be dealing with F2 and coming up with an alternative. But that's where the original draft went. But you have the revised, as Mr. Renshaw has read.
So I think what we have in front of us are probably two extremes on the spectrum of where this board stands on this issue. I don't know that we will reach unanimity, and I don't know that that's a reasonable or necessary goal in everything that we do. But I think another option before us tonight, instead of the either or, is that we take both of these under advisement and work on another draft if the rest of the board feels that that would be helpful, that strengthening of the initial draft, but a softening of the second draft is the best reflection of the consensus of the board. And so that's all I feel quite strongly personally that I would love to see a rail-to-trail project, but absolutely not at the expense of rail infrastructure for the Upper Cape.
I am unwilling to do that. I think we have, unless we do it right now, because I'm not going to delay this again another month of us sending a letter while there's money tied up. I'm fine to go through that and make that version now. Sorry for staying later, but we cannot delay this another month because we don't meet again for the rest of the year.
And I think this is fine the way it is. It captures the intent of what we talked about. If you look at the minutes of the meeting, and I think the minutes are accurate, I think this reflects that. So I don't know why we would want to wait any longer.
Well, I would support
Dr.
Goldstone's suggestion. It has gone on a long time. I don't think another month would be that difficult to wait. I don't think there's ever been any question about the importance of rail to the Cape, in honor of Tom Cahir, whose project, the Rail to Trail, was a big part of his, of his ideas for the Cape. But he was also a major proponent of rail transport to the Cape. So I don't think that it was ever the intent that the Rail to Trail would mean the death knell of, rail service here on the Cape. It was just a way of moving that in one track and moving, thinking about the current track and what would be better long-term as opposed to connecting the two. And I do agree with Vice Chair Goldstone that I think a little bit more refinement of the second letter to maybe get to that position would be worthwhile.
Well, why don't we just do that right now, though?
Yeah, what is it you'd want to change?
Yeah, because I just don't think that for the advocates who keep yelling at us, who keep showing up, it's been now years of doing this. We've said it's okay to wait another month. We've said that 3 times now. So I think because I agree with you, Vice Chair Goldstone. If we had another meeting today, then I would 100% agree with this year. I'd 100% agree with you, but we don't. So
It's 5 days later into the next year.
yeah, but I mean that's 5 days on top of 2 additional
We have
months.
some people here in the audience who may want to speak, so let's quickly see if there is. Mr. Kvosa?
Thank you. And appreciate everybody's service. I know being a select person is thankless because there's always 50% that are not happy. Rail to trail is the biggest mistake our community could ever make. You have rail infrastructure that moves tens of thousands of tons, hundreds of thousands of tons a year of waste off the Cape. Do you know where the closest landfill is to Cape Cod? Where's the closest trash facility? He's going to find out when he goes out to bid, because Bourne's getting filled up. The town of Bourne wants the rail to be removed and the trail to put in, but they've only given you disposal there for a few years. They gave none of your constituents, not one single private entity can go into that landfill. If Doug goes in there with construction demolition debris, that gets loaded on a truck and shipped over the bridge by truck. Doesn't go into the landfill. The MSW that Peter sends there from the community goes into the landfill. That landfill's filling up. You have no option other than CMAS. Don't take my word for it. Look at tipping fees across the United States. We have the highest tipping fee in the country. And yours is going to get higher because you have no option. You need the rail to be that option when he goes to negotiate. You may not move 1 pound of trash on that rail, but if he doesn't have it as an option, what do you think is going to happen to the price? CMAS has gone up 200%. It's not going to be your problem. It'll probably be the next selectman or the selectman after your terms are gone. But don't leave our community in a position where you're removing this rail for a bike trail. I was the president of the Chamber of Commerce. I understand ecotourism. That's what runs my business. Hotels, restaurants, it's critical to my business. I want the Cape to be a pristine, beautiful place to come. I want people to come here, come to the beaches, go on the bike path, but not at the expense of critical infrastructure. We are so lucky to have that rail. You have no idea what other communities are faced with when they have no long-term end disposal. Right now, he has 15 options by rail to get rid of your MSW. By truck, he has 1. And that one's filling up. The town of Bourne is shipping waste from the other side of the bridge onto the Cape, filling up the Bourne landfill. And then they're coming here to you and asking you to rip out the rail. It makes no sense. They're filling up the landfill to fill up their coffers with cash, and they're asking you to get rid of your long-term end disposal. I beg you to please do not support rail to trail. Rail with trail, fine.
It doesn't exist.
I've been a.
Excuse me.
There's 25 other locations to run that bike path. At least 25. And some of them would be way more attractive with thousands of acres of open space around them. You could run the rail trail to the National Cemetery. You could connect the Mashpee schools, the Falmouth schools, and the Bourne schools by bike and not rip out the rail.
Well,
but none of that's been explored because they want to rip the rail out.
don't rip the rail out. It's the biggest asset you have for the future.
Thank you, Mr. Kaposa. Anyone else want to speak to the issue at this point? If not, the board will consider in what direction we want to go. We can either, at Dr. Goldstone's suggestion, and I don't think it's a bad one, it takes more time to refine, especially in light of Mr. Kaposa's comments, and think about a revised draft that can be circulated, public can see in advance of our meeting, or see what you want to do with the drafts before you.
I don't see any way to soften this without changing our position, so I don't know what we would do to change it, honestly.
I think you could take a shot at it. Yes, Mrs. Hill.
Paul Sylvia from the Friends of the Falmouth Bikeways. There's a way to get the demolition material over the canal, has to go over the bridge, truck it in. It's very simple. I think Mr. Cavosa said there's no other alternative. The only way it can get on the other side is with the trail, the train trail. So that doesn't hold any weight. Right now, the military is changing Joint Base Cape Cod drastically. They're going to have a lot of affordable housing in there. They're going to try to develop businesses in there. And putting a rail line from where the transfer station is on the east side of Route 28 can bring it out to the railroad bridge.
We don't know that.
Why
We can
not?
make assumptions.
Well,
I've been told by some train aficionados that it's too steep, it might not be practical. Then other
the new
people
bridge
have
is
said, we might need to go around. I don't think any of us really know the answer to what could be done. But we don't want to just throw away the baby with the bathwater, only to find out that it was just a pipe dream. We need a feasibility study with engineering to tell us what's practical. Can there be another alternate rail? I'd like to explore that first with facts.
And I think that's honestly what I believe that's what the first draft was basically saying, was, figure out a way to think about, replacing F2 with another 21st century type of a rail system. I don't think we're saying, I don't think we're saying ditch it and be done with it. I think we're saying, let's move the rail to trail project, and at the same time, let's figure out a way to, make sure we have proper rail here on the Cape for whatever this, or whether it's transfer elimination, emergency preparedness, commuter rail, anything. I don't think that, my concern with the revised draft is it ties them too closely together, which I think will result in nothing. And that's.
I don't think.
No, there won't be nothing. It'll be a rail that's still functional. What we can't do is just blindly say, okay, take up the tracks, and we hope to get another rail.
But we're not saying that.
We would be if we went with the original letter.
I don't think we're saying that, and even in the original letter,
Well,
we're
that's
saying
what I
move it
feel like.
on a parallel
That's why I
track.
raised the concern about it.
Yeah, okay.
I think the history of rail-to-trail projects across the country tells that when rail is converted, it does not come back. And so, like Mr. Brown, I am not comfortable separating the two or leaving the figuring out of rail infrastructure for the Upper Cape to a subsequent process after we've decommissioned the F2, because I think it is only by tying these two together that we are likely to actually get that replacement strategy.
Exactly.
Otherwise, the track will be ripped up, the trail will be put in. That final piece of actually getting new rail is extremely unlikely to ever come through. There's going to have to be a driver for that.
And how many years?
Honestly, I don't think that the administration would go forward with the approval for the rail to trail unless it dealt with the issue of F2. And that's, I think that's the point we're making, but tying them together, I think Well, I've said what I think. I'm not going to keep saying
It
it.
ensures
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where you like getting that feeling from, like the administration. And also, like, honestly, like, this has been a friendly administration. We can send them a letter of support, but that doesn't even guarantee they're going to do it. That's also the other reality.
Correct. There has to be a reason.
Yeah. So,
Mr. McConnell.
Just want to bring to the board's attention, you understand that the Cape Cod bridges, they've been talking about them for 15, 20 years now. They're trying to get the borings together right now. The funding for the bridges right now, they're having troubles on the state level. That's just for the bridges. Who knows when the bridges are going to be built? It'll be even more difficult when you build a rail line. A rail line, you can't go horizontal and vertical like you can do a highway. Horizontal and vertical on a rail line, you need thousands of feet to turn corners and go up 1% of slope. So the intention of this, you do want to combine them together, in my opinion. But the amount of time that it's taken for the bridge, it should give some indication of what it would take for a rail line, which is a lot harder than doing a highway.
And look at how much time Tom Caher spent trying to get South Coast Rail. You know? A long...
all right, we're doing something tonight, though. So what are we doing?
I'd like to make a motion that we move forward with the red line version as presented by the town manager.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. No. Now we will review and consider vote to approve minutes of the meetings, October 27th and December 1st.
Move to approve.
We have a couple of comments I'd like to...
Can I give this to the press? Do they have a copy?
So to clarify...
We'll get it to them.
Okay.
In the minutes of 10/27/25, I just want to clarify, there was a comment that just said there was mention of the administration building being used for housing. But I'd like to clarify that I asked Superintendent Dewar about considering divestment if the town had another reason to use that building for, and she said she would not be opposed to that. Of course, it's up to the school committee, but I'd just like to reflect that I asked her about divesting T-Ticket Administration Building, and she said she would consider it if the school committee did. And then on the second note on December 1st, 25, on the discussion about the naming of the bridge, I did mention that Army Lieutenant Colonel Joe Vidal passed away on that bridge as a point of reference for why it should be named, not just for one person. I'd like that to be also reflected in the minutes.
Okay. All right, motion to approve as amended by Mr. Brown's suggestion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Renshaw supplemental report?
Yes, sir. Real quickly, as the Vice Chair indicated, we have a date. I'm really excited about this. We had two great planning meetings. The last one was just last week. The title of this community forum will be ICE and Immigration, a community conversation. Dr. Feynman Silva is going to be one of the lead kind of facilitators, help us out. Vice Chair Goldstone was there as well last week. We had a lot of representation from the Falmouth Immigrant Coalition and the DEIB Advisory Committee. So I'm really excited about the direction this is taking. You all probably know, recently, unfortunately, we had another apprehension, November 11th, I believe it was, right in the Human Services/PD parking lot. Still trying to find out status of that individual. But at any rate, this is an important conversation, and it's going to be one, I think, again, unfortunately, because it needs to be an ongoing series, because I don't see this issue going away anytime soon. So there'll be the kickoff. Let me get to the details. Thursday, January 22nd, we're going to advertise and PR this thing so that we get maximum participation. Thursday, January 22nd from 6 to 7:30 p.m. at the Senior Center. Jill Bishop has already reserved the room for us. We're working out final details, whether we're going to have panel conversations, a group of panelists. There's a lot of objectives in this, but we understand. We hope to have some members of the immigrant community participate along with us. We understand realistically that might not happen. but I want to really increase the awareness of the Falmouth community of the impacts of this issue that the ICE operations and the immigration policies are having in terms of impact on businesses. I'm not going to call out anyone in particular, but I know, Doug, you've got a contracting business, and perhaps you haven't seen an impact, but some of your peers have in terms of available workers. And it goes, across the board to restaurants, and it's having an impact on the community. So excited, January 22nd, 6 to 7:30. Please mark your calendars. Again, we're going to get the word out to as many people as we can in the community.
That's a fantastic update.
Thank you very much.
The only thing I ask, and I'm pretty sure the town has this, is that there's a Portuguese speaker at the...
Melania was actually with us last week, so
Great,
she plans
yeah.
on participating and getting some other folks to assist in translation services as well.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Thank you. You made a commitment early on to do this, and I appreciate that that you followed through, and certainly Vice Chair Goldstone as well. So thank you.
What I'm seeing, just if I could just share briefly, people are just leaving by choice because, for one thing, they're pretty disappointed in what they're seeing here, and it's not the dream that they once held. So it's too bad.
Sad state of affairs. Anyone else?
The only thing I'd
Oh, you're done, Mr.
Yes, yes.
Sorry. I'd like to, as much as I have a lot of things I'd like to talk about, I would like to talk soon about the conservation restriction on Long Pond, if possible. I just feel that with a lot of the other conservation restrictions and kind of going off what we just kind of scared me. Said about the library, you could said about with the library. I think that following the police station discussion, showing to the community that we heard them and protecting Long Pond for perpetuity soon would be really good for our relationship with the community, and also just it's the right thing to do with what we have.
Here, number 2 on future agenda.
Yeah,
We're actually going to be proposing an article for April town meeting to do, I think it's two of the parcels, to bring that to the select board. So you'll see that first review on January 26th.
Those are 2 great updates.
The only
Thank you.
Hold on.
I was just saying thank you. That's awesome.
Colin, you have anything? We'll just go down.
Okay.
With that agenda item for Long Pond, also coupling that with Article 97 considerations on existing properties that we might consider using a conservation restriction exchange in the long term, having that as part of the discussion. For me, it's something that, and this is related, which is I sent the email, but just getting it on the list, the municipal property, land, and building kind of master planning process. We have some monies dedicated for very specific campus projects, but using the police station and all of our needs and the big 10-year comprehensive plan, I feel like we actually need to think of a bigger process and have that discussion before proceeding with any of the monies that have been allocated for campus planning.
I'm curious about the status of the Steamship Authority's request for access to the roadways, and if there's going to be a role for the select board in that, or is that going to just be a curb cut handled by engineering?
Engineering is currently reviewing an application that I understand was dropped a couple of months ago. They're going back and forth a little bit, some iterations of that. But
Certainly now that the Steamship Authority has firmed up its contract with the new administrator, I'm hoping we can start a good relationship with him. And
I think, yes, definitely. I'm looking forward to that. But I think we've, and some folks may not agree, but I think the current general manager has been, since certainly the 2 years I've been here, has been responsive to requests, and there's been a good dialogue. It could be better. Anything could, and it goes both ways, I think. But yeah, definitely looking forward to networking and starting that relationship with the new GM.
the only one that I would mention was what I mentioned before, maybe an update from the MLB on
Yes.
what's going on with their efforts.
ISP.
Yep.
Attended the Solid Waste Advisory Committee meeting last week. With, as always, really a lot of great news, a lot of initiatives going on, lots of great events for both recycling and increasingly their fix-it clinics as well, which I'm not sure that the date's set, but there was a plan to have a teen-focused Fix-It clinic on December 20th, which I believe is being postponed due to low enrollment, probably because of the holidays. So that one will be rescheduled, but that committee is also planning for a leadership transition as Mr. Robinson steps down from his chairship this summer. So big change there. And then attended the beach committee meeting where Mr. Wrigley and the team, and I'm sorry, I can't remember their names, but from Urban Harbors Institute up in Boston, who are working on the revision of the beach management plan, came and shared a bit about where they are in the process and solicited input from the beach committee. And as I mentioned earlier, in January, they will be coming back with a draft update of the beach management plan that will be shared with the beach committee, and then at a public information session, I believe January 21st. So that's moving along quickly, which is good because it was overdue, and I think will be a really important piece to have in place as we work on resilience more broadly.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved. Do you think we'll be able to get the short-term rental bylaw back soon?
I have asked Eric to provide an update on that.
Okay.
So I'll check in with him tomorrow about it.
Thank you.
I think we have a motion to adjourn. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Everyone have a good holiday.
Thank you. You as
See you
well.
in the new year.
Hi, it's Brendan from Crane Appliance. Since 1983, our goal as a family-owned company has been simple: to give our neighbors on the Cape and Islands a great shopping experience. Rest easy knowing our professional team will listen to your needs and help you pick the perfect appliances for your home. At Crane Appliance, we know how difficult appliance shopping can be. Our team is here for you. Crane Appliance, we call the Cape and Islands home.
Carlson Printing, 508-548-7303. Our email address is carlsonprinting@gmail.com. Carlson Printing, for all your printing needs.